All right, are we all ready? I want to call this meeting to order. It is 5:48 on Tuesday, March 28th. Tenemos servicios de interpretación disponibles. Por favor, indique con la mesa aquí si se necesita servicios de interpretación. Again, today is Tuesday, March 28th, and on this day in 1949, English astronomer Fred Hoyle coined the term Big Bang during a radio interview. More recently, in 2009, the U.S. had its first known swine flu H1N1 case. H1N1 now is the influenza A, and it's included in the flu vaccine. I diagnosed another flu case this week, and we know that we can get late surges of flu. So if you haven't gotten your flu vaccine, please, there's still time to get that this flu season. And a quick happy birthday to some of my favorite artists, Lady Gaga and actress Vince Vaughn. Happy birthday to some celebrities today. Ms. Pena, can I have a roll call, please?
Ms. Shaw?
Here.
Ms. Ekstrom?
Here.
Ms. Luna Rose?
Here.
Mr. Romero?
Here.
Dr. Ravi?
Here. And just so everyone knows, Ms. Ekstrom will join us virtually during this meeting. I think she ran away and joined the circus is what I heard. So she'll be joining us virtually during the course of our meeting. And I'll take a quick moment on behalf of the board for our health thoughts and condolences to the national community and specifically to the Covenant School community whenever we hear about school shootings, not only as parents or grandparents of elementary and high school students, but even in our roles as board member, it definitely means a lot more when I hear about these tragedies. I'm not going to call for a moment of silence. If it were me and my child killed at our elementary school, that would just make me even more angry. So I'm going to call for action to contact your state legislators and federal legislators and call for action to do something about this problem. I'm going to turn it over to our next first agenda item here, which is our land acknowledgement statement. And we have the wonderful Kanasha Brown joining us to read the land acknowledgement statement. She is our Assistant Superintendent of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusiveness, EDI, in the Department of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusiveness. She is a proud TUSD leader and parent. All of her children attend TUSD schools, Holiday Magnet, Bonilla's Magnet, and Wakefield. She brings 22 years of combined school and district level experience, and Ms. Brown currently serves as the Assistant Superintendent of Equity, Diversity, and Inclusiveness. Her areas of expertise is equity, diversity, inclusiveness, career and technical education, magnet programming, federal oversight programs, including desegregation and continuous school improvement. Ms. Brown, thank you for joining us. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. On behalf of the governing board of the Tucson Unified School District, I, Kanasha Brown, acknowledge that the schools, buildings, and facilities of Tucson Unified School District reside on the ancestral homeland of the Tohono O'odham Nation and the federally recognized tribal land of the Pasquayaqui tribe.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. And next we have our Pledge of Allegiance, and we have third grader from Sam Hughes Elementary School, Riley Corman, joining us for this. I believe she's joining us remotely. There we are. Riley is a third grade student in Miss Jackson's class at Sam Hughes Elementary. She enjoys drawing, playing games with her friends, reading, and telling her own jokes that make people laugh. She's interested in animals, especially dogs and wolves. Some of her favorite activities and lessons this year were researching and writing an essay about the painter Pablo Picasso and learning how to play musical instruments in Oma, including the ukulele and the recorder. When asked what she likes most about the school at Sam Hughes, Riley's answer was the people, because they are so kind and nice. That is really meaningful. Thank you for joining us, Riley, and can we get the flag up? All right. And Riley, the floor is yours.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Well, thank you, Riley.
Thank
you. All right. Our next item includes agenda adjustments. Are there any adjustments for tonight recommended, Dr. Trujillo?
President Shaw, members of the governing board, I'd like to recommend item 8.1. We do have some guests, some external presenters. Our external auditors will be joining us. From Clifton, Larson, and Allen. So I'd like to be able to move them up directly after the call to the audience.
Any objection? Seeing none, I'll take unanimous consent to move item 8.1 following call to the audience. Anything else?
That will do it.
Okay, great. And then the floor remains yours, Dr. Trujillo, for item 3.1, awards and recognitions.
Yes, President Shaw, members of the governing board. Want to welcome everybody from our community, everybody in the viewing public. Welcome to our second meeting here in March. Hope everybody had a wonderful spring break. Tonight, our first moment is to remember the contributions, the memory, and the legacy of one of our hardest working employees who we lost recently. Mr. Matt Wright was an important part of our technology services team. He started his career with TUSD in 2015 as a programmer. His skills and his willingness to take on additional duties resulted in his promotion to a senior programmer. From there, Matt challenged himself to grow personally and professionally as he learned about cloud storage solutions and took several classes to earn various additional Microsoft certifications. His hard work paid off when he was promoted to the position of Cloud Solutions Architect in August of 2022. Over the last several weeks, Matt helped our district restore our systems impacted by the recent cyberware attack and to move additional district processes and programs to the cloud. We were honored to have Matt as our colleague and friend. His intelligence, his thoroughness, dedication, and his sense of humor will be sorely missed. Matt also served as one of our employee association leaders for CWA. He was a tremendously passionate and influential voice in labor for the efforts and the relationship between labor and management in our district. He also served CWA with passion, with dignity, professionalism. Our condolences go out to the Wright family and Erica Meyer, his fiance. We take a moment to honor his service and his memory to the Tucson Unified School District. Thank you. For all of our math enthusiasts, last week was, or the week before spring break was Math Week. And to kind of bring it full circle, we know that our board did call for a resolution to observe Math Week across the Tucson Unified School District in celebration of our love for numeracy. Thank you to all of our students and families that participated in the first annual Math Week. Our district engaged in over 212,000 minutes of math instruction, math games, math activities, and math celebrations, over 3,547 hours of math. So I want to thank all of our teachers, all of our educators, of course, all of our math educators, and all of our students and parents for helping us celebrate Math Week. Our magnet schools are at it again, showing and demonstrating to not just the TUSD community or to the city of Tucson, but the state of Arizona, their excellence and why our magnet schools are some of the most renowned here in the state of Arizona and across the nation. 3 Tucson Unified District magnet schools have received either the National Magnet School of Excellence or the National Magnet School of Distinction by Magnet Schools of America, the National Association for Magnet and Theme-Based Schools, and the preeminent leadership body for professional development, marketing, and best practices of magnet schools in the nation has long been the National Magnet Schools of America. Tucson Unified is very proud of these schools for their dedication to our students and community and the spirit of magnet programming for students across the district. Up first, Carrillo Elementary Magnet School won a Magnet School of Excellence Award. Carrillo is a K-5 school of communication and creative arts. In our magnet portfolio of schools that engages children's minds, bodies, and senses using multiple modes of learning, thought, and self-expression. Students become 21st century leaders in a diverse world through the development of a strong academic core, communication skills, and creative arts abilities. Mansfeld Middle School won the Magnet School of Excellence Award. Mansfeld is a STEM-themed middle magnet school. It is a community dedicated to student academic and personal success for today and the future through science, technology, engineering, and math, better known as STEM, education, with an emphasis on diversity and inclusivity. And Tucson High Magnet School won the Magnet School of Distinction Award. Tucson High Magnet School exists to provide high quality instruction in all curricular areas, fosters an understanding of the world through arts, sciences, mathematics, and the humanities, develop good citizens so that students demonstrate academic and intercultural proficiency as well as career preparedness. They focus on two magnet strands, the fine and performance arts, natural sciences. Tucson High stands alone, not just as an icon, comprehensive high schools historically here in the city of Tucson or in Pima County, but as the largest, comprehensive, and most recognized and renowned nationally and across our state magnet school of distinction for its size of over 3,000 students. These three schools are no strangers to accolades, they're no strangers to awards, and they're no strangers to standing alone atop a field of excellence for magnet schools across the nation. So I do want to congratulate these three schools. Let's give them a round of applause for these wonderful achievements. And while Math Week celebrated a love of numeracy across the Tucson Unified School District, the Festival of Books celebrated the love of literacy across Tucson and across Pima County. Of course, participating in that celebration were our wonderful Tucson Unified School District students. Poetry not only encourages literacy and the power of words, but it also allows us to be curious and to explore the world around us. It allows us to be reflective and to gain an awareness of our innermost thoughts, feelings, beliefs, questions, and even anxieties. These student poets and scholars thought deeply as they created their authentic poetry pieces of writing, and they were recognized for their efforts at the Tucson Festival of Books just a few weekends ago. Let's talk about Martin Duarte for his efforts. He's a second grader at White Elementary School. Anthony Barcelo, fourth grader at Monzo. And Cordell Brantley, fifth grade at White Elementary. And Michaela Jones, eighth grade student at Safford K-8 for their wonderful pieces, their wonderful entries. Martin was recognized for his entry. Kempasuchil Marigold for his poem. Anthony Barcelo for his piece entitled I Am. Cordell Brantley for his piece I Am From. And Michaela Jones for her piece Rest in Peace, Old Me. Let's give these wonderful poets a round of applause. And I want to congratulate Dodge Middle School for winning the Brain Bowl. Dodge Traditional Magnet Middle School took home the Brain Bowl trophy for the fourth consecutive year. The event, hosted by the African American Student Services Department, was held at Utterback Middle School February 28th. The students that made up the winning team were 8th graders Israel, Gabriel, and Marco, and 7th grader Mary Ann. Congratulations, champs. We have the Dodge Middle School Brain Bowl winners. Shifting over to Santa Rita High School, we want to recognize an outstanding student leader who has been selected for the Silent Servant Scholarship. The Peter R. Marsh Foundation announced Santa Rita student Maya Gonzalez as one of their 2022 Silent Servant Scholarship Award recipients. The 9th grader was selected based on her local efforts to positively impact not only the Santa Rita campus, but the surrounding community as well. As the award recipient, this 9th grader joins a select group of high school students across the nation who have received this award in acknowledgement of their kindness and service to others, and is a high honor. As part of this recognition, Ms. Gonzalez has received a $500 check, a congratulatory letter, and a personalized crystal award. According to Principal Tamara Ray, this outstanding leader, is so deserving of this award. At Santa Rita, we place a great amount of emphasis on one pillar in particular: be the good. She makes a choice every single day to be the good and to serve others both on and off the campus. She's an outstanding representative of excellence in community volunteerism and service, and we are so proud of her. The champs are in town. Let's talk about Dodge. Dodge boys soccer champions. Congratulations to the Dodge Middle School Magnet Bulldogs for winning the TUSD Middle School Boys Soccer Championship. They beat a very hardworking and talented side from Roberts Naylor in a close competition, but ultimately prevailed as our district champions. Congratulations, Dodge Middle School Boys Soccer. Not to be outdone, the Mansfeld Bulldogs, the other Bulldogs in the TUSD Middle School universe. Congratulations to the Mansfeld girls soccer team for winning the TUSD Middle School Girls Soccer Championship. They won a tough game against a very, very game team from Pister, who put up a tremendous, tremendous fight, but ultimately it was Mansfeld, the Bulldogs, prevailing. So congratulations to both of our championship teams. We're very, very proud of your accomplishments. Now, celebrating the excellence of our staff, we shift our attention to Borman K-8, where one of our outstanding faculty members was recognized with a Teacher Excellence Award from Tucson Values Teachers. Amy Carter Jenkins from the Borman community was the recipient of February's Tucson Values Teacher Award. She's a first grade teacher at Borman, and she recently relocated to Tucson from the United Kingdom, where she previously taught for 15 years. Her nomination said, Miss Carter Jenkins goes out of her way to make the children feel like they are the most important child in her life. She shows up to sporting events not affiliated with the school to show her support in everything that children do. She sends out daily pictures of what the class is doing and sends daily emails for class events for the current and the upcoming week. She is absolutely phenomenal. Thank you, Miss Amy Carter Jenkins, for your dedication and service to the Borman K-8 community. We celebrate your award. And we also want to recognize a good partner from Tucson Appliance. They recently gifted a washer and dryer to the Tucson High Magnet School community. With the help of the Educational Enrichment Foundation and the generosity of Tucson Appliance, Tucson High, they were the brand new recipient of a new GE Hotpoint washer and dryer for the athletics department. Thank you, Tucson Alliance, for supporting interscholastic opportunities in athletics for the young people of Badger Nation. And lastly, looks like Badger Nation is all over board reports and recognitions today as their excellence continues. This time, we want to celebrate their achievements at the recent Rocky Mountain Regional Emmy Awards competition. And we have them present here, so that makes this all the more special. The National Academy of Arts and Sciences, a Rocky Mountain Southwest Emmy chapter, recognized Tucson High Magnet School as the winner of the Student Production Award in the Fiction Long Form category for the video Friday Night Intervention. This 20-minute short is a deeply powerful film about what it is to be a friend, an enabler, and how choices we make impact others, as well as ourselves. The Tucson High film and TV teacher, I know her as Rosie through the work we do with negotiations. I don't want to butcher the last name, but I know she's here. Is it Zwadek? I nailed it. Okay. But our teacher, Rosie Zwadek, says, this is the highest honor a film can receive. And to be nominated is an incredible feat. While there are only 2 nominations, that does not mean there were only 2 entries. The Emmys receive dozens of films, but only the best of the best is allowed. And they would rather cancel a category than give it to an unworthy film. So a nomination is proof of excellence at the highest possible caliber. This 100% student-led production was written and directed by film student Noah Jimenez, class of 21-22, filmed and produced by 3rd and 4th year film students in the CTE Film and TV program. Ms. Wadek, the film and TV producer and teacher at Tucson High, attended the ceremony and said, I am incredibly proud of my students. This is not only an amazing story, but a great opportunity to show themselves and their peers what amazing things they can accomplish when they have heart, passion, tenacity, and drive. Friday Night Intervention will now go on to the national level to compete against the other 19 districts. And I understand our team, our winners, Our filmmakers are here today. I'd like to invite them up for a picture as this concludes our presentation.
All right, thank you, Dr. Trujillo, for your awards and recognitions presentation. I always love hearing all the amazing things that are happening throughout our district and all the proud moments for our students and staff throughout our district. Next, item 4.1 is our board member activity reports. Again, this is a chance for our board members to talk about what schools they've visited and what they've done representing our school district as our elected members of our school board. Does anyone have a board member report they'd like to submit? Ms. Luna Rose.
Good evening. Thank you. Good evening, everybody, and thank you so much for showing up to our board meeting tonight. And congratulations again to all our award winners and Tucson High. Good luck. I hope you win nationally. Okay, so just a few things. Since we last did board reports, I attended the memorial service for former board member Gloria Copeland. For those who do not know Miss Copeland or know of Miss Copeland, she was the first African-American woman to serve on the Tucson Unified School District Governing Board. She was quite a force in the district, and so it was a really nice service and good to get together with the community, and I was honored to be there. So thank you to the staff over at Saguaro for hosting that event. Next, I unfortunately did not get to go to this event, but I just wanted to make mention of the Mission View Elementary celebration. It was their 100th year celebration, and I wanted to go, but I was ill. But I wanted to speak about, I was disappointed not going because I wanted to bring my mom, who attended Mission View from kindergarten to second grade, and my aunt, Josie Borquez, who had her pictures up at the event. She was the longtime lunch lady for Mission View Elementary, and she started the clothing bank there and various other programs with the principal at the time. So I just wanted to kind of make mention to that. There's a lot of community history, not just with me on the school board, but with a lot of people that attend our district. And lastly, I did also stop by and met with the great staff of the Family Resource Center for the hygiene drive they had a couple of weeks ago at the Walmart at Speedway and Kolb. They were looking for soap, brushes, shampoo, laundry detergent. I brought those. They also are always in need of feminine hygiene products. A lot of people don't really think of those type of products that are needed, but there are students that do come to the nurse or to their clothing bank or their school community liaison asking for those items. So You don't have to do it over at a drive. You can bring it to your school. You can drop it off at your school's nurse's office. They'd be more than happy to receive those items. And I just wanted to make mention that there is a shoe and sock drive on April 15th at the Walmart at Speedway and Cole from 8 to 12. They're looking for new shoes from sizes 1 youth to 10 adults. And these are very popular drives they do, and they're very needed. So if you can be so gracious to donate, it'd be much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Luna Rose. Ms. Shaw, and then Mr. Romero. Okay.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. I went to Booth Pickett a few weeks ago, maybe a month ago, and visited Mrs. White's class, who is the wife of our own Barry White, who is usually over to my right. And I got to read Mrs. White's daughter's memoir. She's a sophomore in this district, and it was basically about like all of her experiences in each grade, and it was really eye-opening for the students to learn that you don't have to wait till you're an adult to write a memoir, and sometimes it's a way for students to deal with some negative things that have happened to them and process it. And so at the end of me reading that essay, all the students wanted to write their own memoirs, and it was really powerful. And that was a good segue for me reading Amazing Grace to them by Mary Hoffman, which is an inspirational book about basically being able to do anything you put your mind to, despite what you may look like on the outside. And I also visited Jeff Sawyer over at Booth Pickett and saw, again, his giant positive behavior intervention store, intervention and support store, where he's personally helped stock the store. It was like almost two large rooms full of stuff where students, if they did well, they would go into that store and receive a toy or just all kinds of things. It was like a Walmart inside of there. So good job, Mr. Sawyer. I visited Gridley Middle School on that same day, got a tour and spoke with some staff about the needs over at Gridley. And a couple Saturdays ago, I visited the Southern Arizona Regional Science and Engineering Fairs Awards Ceremony and Celebration at Reed Park, where my daughter was awarded the Excellence in Engineering Award for her project titled The Portable Sink. And I just want to congratulate all the students who won an award and also just participated. As I told my daughter, there's no guarantee that you'll win anything. But of course, each year you become sharper and learn something from just, trying it out. So I want to encourage students and teachers next year to really, encourage your class to try out for it. Though, it may be scary, it's always a learning experience. I also attended the African American Student Services second quarter student recognition, where my daughter and her peers in elementary school were honored with, if they had high attendance and grades. It took place at the Tucson Museum of Art, and it was fabulous. All of the families and students got to walk around the museum, and for many, it was the first time going to that museum. So thank you to African American Student Services Department for organizing that. Most recently, I toured the Milagro co-housing site, which is a sustainable housing community that's adjacent to some TUSD property that this previous board decided not to sell. And my daughter and I learned a lot about how they I guess recycle the water that they use and then use it for landscaping and other things, and it was just really inspiring. So I invite anyone who's interested in sustainability to check them out. And I just want to thank Miss Luna Rose for mentioning Miss Copeland's memorial over at Saguaro a while back. I also attended, and there were just so many people who Miss Copeland touched, and many previous board members also, and I was honored to read the reflection at her memorial. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shaw. Congratulations to you and your daughter, Salome, for the award on engineering, you said?
Yeah. And I take no credit because when she tried to help, she tried to get me to help her with the concept. I really didn't understand what she was talking about. Luckily, her dad has an engineering brain, and he helped her
There
bring
you
it
go.
to a reality.
We must be super proud. Great. Mr. Romero.
Okay. Mine's pretty short and sweet. Had a slower month this time around. Got a chance to do the tour at Pueblo Gardens, Principal Michael Conrad. Also, Rincon High School with Principal Alyssa Welch. And got to tour a phenomenal campus at Borton with Principal Eric Yulberg. Fantastic little campus over there. And then did a small segment on the Bill Buckmaster Show.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Romero. Ms. Ekstrom mentioned she didn't have anything she wanted to share to this meeting. So I'll conclude with my report. I had a chance to visit the Mission View for their 100th Centenario. Took my kids with me, who really appreciated the bouncing castles and the train, and of course the folklorico and other entertainment. It was amazing seeing the entire community out that evening. It was a packed event, and there were things inside and outside in terms of the history and the celebration. So I was really excited to join the Mission View community for that event a few Fridays ago. And even though Love of Reading was in February, I did have a chance to do a few Love of Reading book readings with some of our schools, including Blendman, Borton, C.E. Rose, and Lynn Euripides. So thank you for those invitations. Hope to continue to do that in April and May. And just want to welcome everyone back from spring break. It was great to be off, and even though it was probably the coldest and wettest spring break since I've been here in Tucson for almost the last decade, I'm glad we all had a chance to relax and get away from work and school and all that. So that's my board member report, and so I'll conclude this topic and turn it over to Mr. Romero, our board clerk, for our call to the audience.
All right, public participation at board meetings. Members of the public may speak during the call to the audience. The governing board clerk shall be responsible for recognizing speakers and maintaining order where it may be appropriate. Those who speak in person or want to have their comments read may email or call the board office or complete a request to address the board form before the meeting. The speaker must state their full name, the topic prior to addressing the board. Speakers are encouraged to be brief with a maximum time of 3 minutes. If there are documents for the board, please give them to the board office staff, and they will ensure each board member receives a copy. Those attending the meeting and are speaking before the board shall observe rules of good conduct. Speakers should also refrain from inappropriate or slanderous remarks. And because TUSD serves students from preschool to high school, speakers should be aware that there may be children present and listening. At the end of the call to the audience, the governing board president will ask if any board member wishes to respond to criticisms, wish to ask staff for a review on a matter, or wish to ask that the matter be put on a future agenda. No more than 2 members may address each topic. Contents of this card are public information. So we're going to go ahead and start. We're going to go with Carla Coda Gallardo, and then followed up by Gern Blanston. Carla? Carla Coda Gallardo. Okay. We will go ahead to next, then Gern Blanston, followed by Katie Goldman. Is this like one of those hidden cameras somewhere? Okay, then. We're going to go along with Katie Goldman, followed by Arnie Bermudez.
Hi, my name is Kate Goldman, and I live here in Tucson and pay taxes, and I'm a parent to a TUSD kid. And I was really upset last week when I got an email out of nowhere requesting applicants for a faith-based advisory committee for the TUSD board. I don't know where to begin. We have opportunities in our community to involve ourselves with religious affiliations. They already get tax write-offs. My child, we intentionally put in a public school where I felt there would be a safe difference and distinction between church and state. And so when I saw this email, as somebody, as a Semite, as someone from a Jewish background, so many things flooded my mind about where this leads to and where this is coming from and who's really benefiting from this. And none of them are good. So I'd like to know why this is being put together. I mean, I saw the spiel of to create ethical, moral people, to have this broad representation, but how are we going to make sure equitably that every faith and non-faith group is represented? How are the people even being selected? I tried to fill out the form right away. It doesn't work. The link doesn't work. I've sent emails to the email in the body of the email, to the reply. None of the emails work. They're all blocked. I've saved all my screenshots. So I'm assuming the committee is already cherry picked, which doesn't surprise me. I just don't see the need for a secular institution that I thought prided itself on critical thinking to be advised in any way by any faith. Where's the evidence advisory committee? That's stupid. That's school, I thought. You are the evidence advisory, I thought. Why are we having a faith-based one? I've seen where this has what this has led to in the past. And all I see is that it pushes out equity for a lot of underrepresented groups. So I'm just begging you to reconsider and think about the harm that this is going to cause. Thanks.
Thank you. Arnie Bermudez, followed by Ken Richings.
Hello, my name is Arnie Bermudez. I'm a parent, taxpayer, live in Tucson, Pima County, and I also received the same email. So I just have a couple of questions for you guys, and hopefully you can address it and bring some light to the issue. The first one is, as a public school district that is funded by tax dollars, how is this legal? Who are the faith-based organizations that are involved? Will there be any evidence-based advisory committee? If not, can you make one to be fair and balance things out? Why is parental involvement only limited to just 2? It seems really unbalanced. Will there be organizations that are not monotheistic and Abrahamic in nature involved? And why are we trying to shoehorn religion into our school district, since there are already private schools all over Tucson that can fill that gap? This is really troubling, and I just want some answers. And that email that you guys sent out had no answers and no links that worked. So I'd really appreciate something. Thank you.
Ken Richings, followed by Karen Enyedi.
Hello, my name is Ken Richings, teacher for 20 years, mostly public, mostly elementary school. I want to thank the board today, and before I read my prepared notes, I want to piggyback on the need and exhortation for critical thinking and evidence-based decision-making in everything that we do. But I just want to thank you for your work. Truly, I appreciate the personal energy and time of the members of this board that goes into this endeavor. I know that everyone here is doing what they feel is best and think is best. 2 issues that will repeatedly come up here at future board meetings for discussion and voting will have to do with children's health and children's privacy. And it will not be limited strictly to 5G virtual reality pilot programs or mandatory experimental injection technologies. And it won't be limited to data tracking from preschool into adulthood. So please consider the implications of mandatory data collection, its protection, and potential extra proliferation, whether that's the private health data of transgender youth, for example, or such microbehavioral data from in kindergarten when you drew a picture of one friend but not of 2. Questions will persist, like who owns this data, and did parents truly give a fully informed consent for these actions? Please consider the unknown future ramifications of your collective decisions here on the future health of children long after your terms expire. And I do truly thank you for your work and your civility. Thank you.
Thank you. And last up, Karen Anyady.
Hello, Super. Hi, this is good. Yeah. So, greetings. My name is Karen Enyedy. Thank you to Superintendent Dr. Trujillo and all the members of the governing board for having open forums. I'm simply here to invite any of you or any of your associates in administration to visit the Milagro co-housing community and learn more about a collaborative proposal that was presented a year ago, March, at a governing board meeting. That was presented by, excuse me, Steve Farley, who, along with myself and probably 50 or so other people, are members of Milagro Co-housing. Like all co-housing communities, it's an intentional community, and the intention is simply for neighbors to support each other in sharing resources, assisting with needs between families, helping with children, caring for children, alternating support for that. And our community also has an second intentional mission, which is for ecological living, sustainable features, and resilience. So I'm a member of the community's ecology, sustainability, and resilience committee. And what we're hoping is that there might be a way that the Tucson Unified School District could conserve the 10 acres of Sonoran Desert property on the intersection of Gorat Road and Gaia Place. And Gaia Place leads into the Milagro community. And what we have to offer the school is we have 43 acres of land, and 8 of those are in a sustainable featured community. We have a lot of features I could explain, and then 5 of those acres are just simply what you might call functional open space, and 30 of them are deed restricted to be preserved as open space in perpetuity. So deed restricted by our county, what I'm trying to say, assessor's office or county. I'm sorry, I'm sure you know what I mean. And what we could do is have students tour the TUSD land and then tour the natural areas of our preserved land. And they would be therefore able to see many more plant zones than we would have on either one of our properties. So we have invited schools to come and tour. And we also worked recently with Robbins. So Principal Chandra Thomas asked if we could help with a educational native plant display.
Time. Sorry.
Oh my,
Sorry.
that was
I know.
fast.
You went
Yeah.
quick.
Oh, okay. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Maybe I'll follow up with emails.
Please.
And that includes our call to the audience. So this is an opportunity for board members to respond to criticism, ask staff to review matters, or wish to ask that a matter be put on the future agenda. I'm going to first actually turn over to Dr. Trujillo to first make a comment on the email and the Faith-Based Advisory Council before board members speak on it.
Yes, I want to thank our call to the audience. Number one, certainly want to apologize. The wording of the email, we certainly understand how it could be read as an action committee that might have a little bit more influence in decision making than in actuality that it does. What it is it's in line with our strategic plan, where we're casting a wide net to try to capture as many stakeholder voices as we can within the TUSD universe on a advisory basis only. This advisory committee is not going to have any decision-making power in any area of curriculum, instruction, programming, policy making in schools, but we would like to at least reach out to the faith-based community in terms of where they can contribute with the overall needs of TUSD kids, such as childcare, assistance with food pantries that we have running, service opportunities, donations, and the like. We understand that the initial email didn't capture the spirit of our intention. We want to make sure that of course, is known publicly. The Tucson Unified School District, like all traditional public school districts, we are secular. We are a secular institution. We are religiously and politically apolitically and neutral, and we want to maintain that stance and make sure that any representation or volunteers wanting to serve on this advisory group, that is welcomed. So we certainly will look into the technical glitches that were experienced by the speakers. Thank you, President Shaw.
All right. Ms. Shaw, then Ms. Luna Rose.
Thank you, and thank you everyone who spoke at the call to the audience today. I just want to address Mrs. Goldman and Mr. Bermudez for your advocacy and like set the record straight like that. I learned about this as a parent in the email also, so this wasn't a board formed committee at all, and we were all taken aback. And I just wonder like the need for an advisory committee if they really have no say in anything. So we're going to look into it and talk to legal about that. So thank you.
Ms. Luna Rose.
Yes, thank you. And thank you to Ms. Golden, Mr. Bermudez for, as Ms. Shaw said, as a parent, I also did not know about it until I got that email, and then immediately got texts from emails from friends and other parents with the same concerns. And I think that in the spirit of community, this is what it's trying to do, but it could have been worded better, just as Dr. Trujillo said. So I think as a board, we're going to work to make sure that the way that if this does go through, we're going to have it as a true community partnership and not, I understand, as somebody who is secular most of the time, I frankly would be coming up here as a parent if I was on the other side of the dais. I would have come. So Ms. Goldman, thank you for coming on that. And just as an aside, some of the messages I got, is the district going to have a science advisory committee, a language arts advisory committee, a fine arts advisory committee, a secular advisory committee? So, I mean, those are things that we can look at. We don't want to have too many committees because there's only so much staff to have so many committees, but if we can figure out a way to make this work and make sure that we're representing all of our constituency, and especially as a parent, I want to make sure that none of my daughter's peers who are in high school are feeling left out, and especially at that age when they're trying to figure out who they are and they see a faith-based committee. And so I understand your concerns, so thank you for coming. And Miss, I'm probably going to butcher your last name, Emet Karen? Enedy. I'm sorry, I'm totally bad with last names. I would love to come and visit, so please send us an email. I would like to take a tour and see what you're doing. Okay. Yeah, please send me an email. I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Any other board members? All right, thank you, Mr. Romero. That'll conclude the call to the audience. And then we have the board adjustment or the agenda adjustment to have item 8.1 next, which is our fiscal year 2022 annual comprehensive financial report. Do we have all of our popcorn will be a very filling report, and we have Mr. Hernandez coming to our stage. Mr. Hernandez, please introduce yourself for all of our audience.
I take offense to that joke, Dr. Shaw.
It wasn't a joke. I love finances. I'm a money nerd.
So my name is Ricky Hernandez. I am the Chief Financial Officer of Tucson Unified School District. So today, and I believe they are on Zoom. So today you will get a presentation from Clifton Larson Allen regarding our fiscal year 22 annual comprehensive financial report. This is our annual financial statement audit that is presented to you by our external auditors regarding our financial statements, our financial capacity. They will actually lead the presentation. I will manage the clicker from here. And they will take any questions, as will I, but ultimately this is a presentation from our auditors to our governance, which is you as governing board members of the district. So I will let Jose Martins and I think Lupita Martinez are both on here to take over from here, and I will move the presentation for them. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Lupita Martinez. I am a principal at Clifton Larson Allen in Phoenix. With me, I have Jose Martins, who is a manager with our firm in Tucson office. And we have a slide presentation for you. I'm not sure I can see it, but is that up, Mr. Hernandez?
Yeah, the cover slide is up for you right now.
Perfect, thank you. So as Mr. Hernandez mentioned, we are here to report to the governing board on the audit of the comprehensive annual financial report for the district's June 30, 2022 fiscal year end. Next slide. Our agenda will start with the ACFR for the year ended June 30, 22. We will cover the opinions as well as some financial highlights. We will then go on to discuss the required communications with governance, and we will end with the status on the other reports. Next slide. So our scope of work is to provide the district with assurance in the form of audit opinions based on the audit procedures performed. And our results are as follows. With regard to the basic financial statements, the district received an unmodified or a clean opinion on those statements. With regard to other supplementary information, the district receives what's called an I'm sorry?
Go ahead.
The district receives what's called an in relation to opinion, which means that that information is materially reasonable in relation to the financial statements as a whole. With regard to the supplementary information and the introductory and statistical sections of the ACFR, the district received what's called a disclaimer of opinion, and that basically is no assurance on that information. That is industry standard for all state and local governments. And then we want to inform you that the audits were performed in accordance with both generally accepted auditing standards, which are the standards applicable to financial audits, as well as government auditing standards, which are the standards applicable to grants and contracts, any federal and state grants and contracts. For the next slide, I'm going to turn over the next section to Jose to take you through some of the financial highlights.
We can't hear you, Jose.
It says you're on mute.
Excuse me, Ricky, can you hear me now?
Yeah,
yes,
now we can hear you.
Okay, so sorry about that technology issues. I was saying good evening, everyone. My name is Jose Martins. I'm the manager on the audit engagement, and I'll go over the highlights of the statement of net position and changes. Can you please go to slide number, just up to slide number 4, Ricky, please? There we go. One down. There we go. Thank you, Ricky. This slide primarily presents the changes from prior year to this fiscal year 2022 that we are engaged to audit. you'll see that the district current and other assets increased from prior years of approximately $55.5 million. The increase is primarily due to operating grants and contributions received by the district, sitting in cash and cash equivalents. The next item, which is capital assets, you'll see that the district capital assets increase of approximately $9.2 million. The increase is a result of significant capital improvement across the district from increases in federal funding that we observed. The deferred outflow of resources, which is the next line item, that increase of approximately $1.1 million from last year. And that in itself is primarily due to just routine changes that happened from last year to this year. The next item that I would like to focus is the total liabilities. The total liabilities for fiscal year 22 compared to fiscal year 21, a decrease of approximately $118 million, and the increase is primarily change due to the payments on outstanding bonds compared to last year, as well as the change in the pension liability. The next line item, which is deferred inflow of resources, that primarily, the change in there increased of $115 million, and that's primarily due to the actuarial calculations, which is performed through the ASRS impacting your pension calculations. So the net position overall as a whole increased about $68.4 million compared to last year. Can you please move it to the next slide, Ricky, please? This slide presents the changes of statement of activities compared to fiscal year compared to prior years. Your total revenues resulted in $586 million compared to prior years at $510 million. That's an increase of approximately $76.5 million, primarily in the revenues received from the ESSER funding that really impacted that revenue. That also goes along with the total expenses. We did see an increase of $46.9 million compared to last year. So the change in net position compared to last year, we saw an increase of $29.5 million, and is again primarily the driver is the additional federal funding that was received from last year. Can you please change to the next slide, Ricky? Can you? I'm not sure, we're having technical difficulties again. Sorry, Ricky. Can you change to next slide, please?
Yeah, it's on slide 6 now.
Okay, thank you. This is a highlight of the governmental fund balances changes compared to last year. So this is just a summary of your major funds, which is your general fund, your special project fund, and one new fund. It's new in relation to the classification as a major fund, which is your other special revenue fund, and the debt service fund, and your total non-major governmental funds. So this slide presents a change from prior years. So your general fund increased about $2 million compared to last year. That also go in line with the increase in grant and contributions that was noted through the audit. The special revenue fund had a small increase of $456,000. The other special revenue fund decreased approximately $91,000, and that's primarily due to expenses exceeding your revenues in the current year. Your debt service fund increased of approximately $727,000, and your total combined non-major governmental funds increase of approximately $9.8 million. Can we move to the next slide, Ricky? So part of our audit requirements is we have to communicate with those charged with governance on key items that are set by the standards. And the slides prior to this was a draft of the financial statements that we're presenting. In that draft, we did see that the district adopted a new standard, which is the GASB 87 lease standard. This adoption of the lease was very standard across all the state and local governments that we had that is currently experiencing that. The difference there is that primarily before the standard, your operating lease was primarily a footnote disclosures and presented as part of your changes and activities. With the implementation of the standard, all the leases are now on the face of the financials, meaning part of your balance sheet. The next item, which is significant estimates, we did see that the district does have significant estimates throughout the financial statements, and these are very standard estimates throughout other similar districts within the state of Arizona. The district use of life of depreciable assets, that's one item that is estimated by the district. The pension and other post-employment benefits, compensated absences, self-insurance, and lease revenue or deferred inflows. These estimates have been provided by the district, and we have reviewed for reasonableness in relation to the financial statements as a whole. The next line item, which is no particular sensitive financial statements disclosures were noted through our audit process. We did not encounter any difficulties dealing with staff. Everyone was very cooperative and working with us alongside. There was a delay in the routine process of issuing the financial statements, primarily due to the impact of GASB 87, which delayed overall the audit. At this point, we don't have any uncorrected or corrected misstatements that we're required to communicate. We're not aware of any consultations with other accountants, in other words, shopping for an opinion. And we do have discussions with management during the normal course of this engagement, which is primarily to really understand the procedures in place within the district, but also to gain knowledge through the audit process. Can you please move to the next slide, Ricky? And I'll turn it over back to Lupita for this. Next slide. Thank you.
So in conclusion, for the ACFR, we will be releasing that audit prior to the end of this month. It should be out in the next couple of days. With regard to the single audit and the USFR, those audits are complete. Those binders are being reviewed, and we're trying to issue those by March 31st. However, there are no guarantees. The Auditor General is aware that those are completed and are coming. And again, we will try to hit the deadline. However, it could go into April, but only a couple days past March 31st. And then the DSEG examination has not yet started. That will be started sometime in April. And that concludes our report to governance. My information, as well as Jose's, is in front of you. Should you have any questions, feel free to call or email us or our firm. That concludes our report.
Thank you. So along with the presentation that Lupita and Jose presented to you today, there is the copy of the 500-page ACFR, as we lovingly call it. that is available for public review. We will post it once it's final and actually it has a report date issued on it. We will post that on the financial services website, on TUSD's website, and we will distribute it to the required agencies that are required to receive a copy of our ACFR. Other than that, if you have any questions, I certainly am open to them.
Well, thank you, Mr. Hernandez, and thank you, Ms. Martinez and Mr. Martins. We all know as governing board members that our fiduciary role, in governance and making sure the district is spending money appropriately and earning money appropriately is one of the most important roles we have. So I definitely appreciate the opportunity to have this come to the governing board and to review this. Mr. Romero, you asked first,
Yes.
and so I'll turn over to you.
Okay, so I know this slide gave us about 7-8 slides that we got going over here. I know something else was attached with 159 pages of everything that that came on out. My first question is, was a copy provided to the audit committee prior to presenting to the governing board?
No, because the audit committee does not meet until the month of May.
Okay, I have our audit committee charter, and in our charter, the audit committee oversees TUSD engagement of any independent accountants for the purpose of prevailing or issuing an independent audit report or performing other independent audit review or attest services. The governing board, acting on recommendations of the audit committee, makes all final decisions concerning the appointment, compensation, retention of such accounts. All accounts thus engaged report directly to the audit committee, which oversees their work and evaluates their performance. Now, a couple things under that oversight responsibilities is meeting with the independent auditors prior to the commencement of the annual audit to review the engagement letter. Receive and review the draft annual audit report and draft management letter. Making recommendations to the board concerning acceptance of the annual audit report. So to my understanding, we have a policy that we have an audit committee that's supposed to be going to where the externals are supposed to come to them, and they're going to ask the questions. The members of the audit committee must collectively possess knowledge of the accounting, auditing, finance reporting, and school district finances. The following individuals, goes to something else. So we have an audit committee for the board. They need to have this information so they can ask the proper questions. I don't know if all my colleagues went through the whole 159 pages of what they sent and everybody knew what they meant. But we have an audit committee that needs to do that. I've got just a lot of questions. I don't think policy is now optional if we don't have the audit committee go over this.
So let me be frank. The audit committee has been incapable of meeting its requirement under quorum. Due to their inability to meet quorum, we have been incapable of managing our business in the financial services department with the audit committee. They met in the month of February. This draft was not available in February, unfortunately. We were delayed by 2 weeks due to a cyber attack that provide us no access to any financial information to provide to our external auditors. The audit committee charter requires them to meet bi-monthly. They don't meet until the month of May. They chose to not meet until the month of May. In fact, when they actually had their meeting back in February. But before February, they haven't had a meeting since August. So certainly understand that they have a charge by the governing board to review these items, and certainly we are going to present it to them. Last year, we did it the same. My predecessor provided and we issued a annual comprehensive financial report. The audit committee did meet in the month of March, did meet in the month of May. They met in August. And that is when actually Ms. Martinez was there to provide the presentation to the audit committee again, because last fiscal year, the audit committee was incapable of meeting its quorum requirements in order for us to conduct business. So respectfully, we can't stop some of the things that we're required by statute to do because the committee can't meet. I mean, we have to issue these by the end of the week. And so if the audit committee doesn't meet, we're kind of at a crossroads and you're the ultimate governance.
I'm gonna piggyback on this. My first question was going to be to you in terms of what the discussion was in the audit committee about this report, because I assume that this had gone through the audit committee, and I don't think it's fair to say that the audit committee isn't meeting, that's why it didn't happen. I know when I was on the audit committee, we were meeting monthly, and it still went to the governing board before it came to the audit committee. So even years ago, I know it was your predecessor, wasn't you in that role, the audit committee wasn't used in the way that it was intended. And so my question was going to be, what were the experts in the audit committee? What were their questions, and what were there any comments or any feedback that they had about this before? Well, apparently we don't have that information because it never went through the audit committee. Do we have do we have a functional audit committee? Do we have members on this? How many members are on this?
Currently, we have 4 members, and I was there at the last meeting, and we have Bernie Smith is now our new chair of the audit committee.
Yeah, so we do have 4 members. We are expecting that we are going to lose another member by the end of term. So by the end of fiscal year at that point, my understanding from reading the charter is that they will not be able to meet, just the way that their quorum language is currently set up. So until the governing board appoints a 4th member, because Mr. Romero is not a voting member of the audit committee, we're not gonna be able to conduct business. So, you know, the single audit, which is the next report that has to come up, the USFR compliance questionnaire, which is the other item that has to come up, we have to present those to you. We have to present those to the external agencies, the Arizona Auditor General's office, who does a review of everything we provide. You know, we would love to present to the audit committee, but unfortunately a functional audit committee is just not been there in the last 6 months.
Dr. Shaw.
Ms. Luna Rose.
Thank you. So before Mr. Romero, I was the board member that was on the audit committee, and to be frank, yes, with Mr. Hernandez, we could not meet, and so those meetings kind of just sort of fell apart. And so for Mr. Romero and for other people who are listening, if you want to join the audit committee, they're looking for members. And so, you know, you can contact us or contact Mr. Romero, since he is the ex officio board member, so or officio board member. So obviously we need community support. So I just wanted to throw that out there, that the community can jump in at any time if you're really curious to see, you know, what is this 159-page report about. This is your chance to get involved.
Mr. Romero.
So just for me, I don't feel comfortable because, again, like I said, we didn't have people that would do that. Under my leadership for the audit committee, I'm going to let people know that how important it is that we have quorum on these things and how important these things are. Again, I just don't know, just coming in as a newbie on this one, if it was just overlooked or what. Again, I haven't had a chance to talk to all the members of the audit committee because this just came out on Friday. So that's just my concerns, that the audit committee is being overlooked or not given that option to let them know the severity of this. Maybe they just didn't know. I don't know. Just by reading the charter, it sounds like it's very important to me. Otherwise, this charter, I can just throw it in the garbage and it doesn't matter at all.
I'm going to ask a quick question. So this is a study action. So what is
so under this by law, the governing board is required to accept. Acceptance does not mean approval nor affirmation of what's in there. It just means that you're actually accepting the report that Clifton Larson Allen has provided to you on behalf of the district. That has to be done by a roll call vote. That is the way that statute is written around this. And so our request is for the governing board on behalf of the district to accept the ACFR. The intent is to, if and when the audit committee achieves quorum, hopefully in the month of May, to present these reports as they become available, the ACFR being the first one. So that is the recommended action for this evening.
And is there a deadline to complete that action for governing board members?
So we're required to issue these reports 9 months after the close of fiscal year, so this Friday.
So we are not complying with state law. We haven't accepted this by March 31st.
I don't know about the compliance piece, but I would say if it's not accepted, then essentially, yeah, we're violating statute, because the statute says the governing board has to accept these.
Dr. Trio, then Ms. Shaw had her hand up as well.
So we were here last month we gave a very detailed update on all of your board appointed committees. We reviewed how many times they had met. We reviewed membership challenges in each board appointed committee. Our challenges achieving a quorum have been pretty well documented with the audit committee. We are at a point where we have to ask a question: do we stop core functions of the finance department and our obligations to be transparent with what is the largest and most comprehensive financial report that we owe the public, as well as the Auditor General's office, until we can address the challenges in the governing board appointed committee and some of the obligations that we have in the charter language? We would happily accept any direction. I understand we have a new, Mr. Ramo, you're serving as our new governing board liaison, and we're looking for your leadership to try to get a quorum at every single one of these meetings so that we can make sure that the business of the district carries forward. But we're at a point now where we're in April. We're coming up on April. We have stacked governing board meetings coming up as we get into budget season. We're getting into negotiations. We're getting into code of conduct season. So we're looking for some direction here. If the governing board really does want to hear from the audit committee, a special audit committee meeting that they can view this report, we can come back. We can maybe look at the Auditor General's office for some kind of an extension. We can maybe get full opinion in executive session from our general counsel. I'm trying to create as many avenues as possible to a very practical dilemma that we've had with this committee's inability to form a quorum.
Ms. Shaw, and then Mr. Romero.
Thank you. Also, thanks to Mr. Romero for raising this important point. It's unfortunate that we were presented with this annual comprehensive financial report so close to the deadline, because if we saw anything that was, that we didn't agree with, like what could we do with the deadline looming? And so how long has it been completed? That's my question.
It's been completed for a week
Okay.
because of the delay. So the implementation of a new promulgation from GASB 87 on leases, we lease a lot. So we've actually asked for extensions from external agencies because of this. And then not to mention the fact that 2 weeks without access to financial data is, in the middle of an audit is just killer. We can't provide what our auditors need without access to that information.
Okay. Well, I think, with the points Mr. Romero raised, like I would like to invite the community to join the audit committee, and it's really simple. If you just Google TUSD audit committee, it'll send you to the portion of our website where you could click a link and it'll take you straight to the application. So we need people. We need people to review these things, people with like financial literacy, and I guess people who care also. So yeah, thank you.
All right, Mr. Romero, then Ms. Ekstrom.
Okay, so just again, as I'm learning on this, if it just got available a couple weeks ago and the audit committee, like I said, the last one I was at, we had quorum, but it took so long and we waited to the end, can we request an earlier timeline so the audit committee can do their job?
Yeah, normally we would have this issued by the end of December. Our normal deadline with our auditors and their contract is by the end of December. But at that point, before the cyber attack, and I can certainly go into detail about what GASB 87 requires, and next year we're going to have another GASB promulgation. GASB is Government Accounting Standards Board. They set out the accounting standards for all governments, state and local, including us. So they issued a new one that we had to implement. Unfortunately, the amount of detail and the amount of information that is required to present to our auditors in order to meet their testing requirements is significant. Like I said, we lease a lot. We receive a lot of lease revenue. We lease a lot of property, from laptops to school buses to buildings. So providing that amount of information in order for them to meet their testing standards, that takes a significant amount of time for the finance department staff to put that together. Our goal has always been December 31, with the intent that before we come to you in March or February, there is an audit committee meeting that we can provide them these reports so that they can pore over them and ask the questions that you would like them to ask. Unfortunately, that wasn't possible. Our expectation for next year is with GASB 87, we are actually going to look for a vendor, unfortunately, to actually provide us a software as a service solution. We're going to look into several of these vendors in order to provide us the opportunity to collect this information so that it can actually automate some of the reporting, because a lot of the reporting that we created was manual. And, when you are the 5th largest employer in Pima County, that's a lot of decimal points. So we certainly have solutions to make sure that we meet your need to have the audit committee review this ahead of the governing board. Unfortunately, this year was just not that year.
And are there any other reports that are going to be coming up that we need to know about that needs to come to the governing or comes to the audit board before it comes to the governing board? I don't know if there's other.
So the single audit, which is the federal audit that has to be provided for. So we have that one that is currently in the finishing stages. The USFR compliance questionnaire, that questionnaire is also being completed right now. Ms. Martinez talked about that. And then the DSEG audit, that's a supplemental audit that the district requires, that is going to be started in April. So the hope is that the CQ and the single audit, we're not expected to bring those to you until sometime in the mid to late summer, just because of the scheduling that Dr. Trujillo alluded to. So between then and now, there is hopefully a May audit committee where quorum will be established, and then we can talk about the single audit and the CQ, so that then we can have those conversations with you here, hopefully probably in the month of July, I would say.
Okay, I would just like to find out those deadlines so that we're not up against like we are right over here. Again, like I said, I'm learning along the way, so I have a lot of questions. Thank you, Ricky.
Sure. Ms. Ekstrom?
Well, I appreciate all the work that went into this, so thank you for your presentation. And I do appreciate what Mr. Romero is saying, but we cannot hold up the business of the district because we don't have a quorum for the audit committee. So we just really need to move forward and get this done. Thank you.
So governing board members, we have a couple options. One option is to move to go to executive session to get some more clarification from our legal on what our obligations are at this time. Another option is to just move ahead with acceptance of the document as presented. And there might be third or fourth options, but those are the two that I'm proposing to see. Ms. Ekstrom?
I move to approve this as presented.
I second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Peña, we were informed that we need a roll call on this to stay legal.
Ms. Shaw?
Yes.
Ms. Ekstrom?
Yes.
Ms. Luna Rose?
Yes.
Mr. Romero?
Abstain.
Dr. Ravi?
Yes. Item passes 4-0-1. And so, I think you just heard some of our frustrations. We are not experts on financial of the district, and even though we're here to hold the district accountable, we rely on this audit committee that we've put in place and really crafted a charter that we feel really meets the needs of the governing board in its fiduciary responsibility. So our goal is really to make sure that we have a recruited audit committee, and there's some time and energy, maybe not emails sent out for other committees that aren't board related, but actually emails sent out to the district listserv about things that are actually relevant to the governing board and our minimal needs of holding the district financially accountable. And we'll need that support to make sure we're doing the best work that we can.
Absolutely.
But we definitely appreciate the work that you're doing, Mr. Hernandez, on this. And of course, to our external auditors, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you.
All right, and now we go to our very busy consent agenda, which includes minutes of our last governing board meeting. I'm going to make a motion to approve our consent agenda.
I'll second.
Item is moved in second. Any questions or clarifications or edits to the minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 All right. All right, and then we're going to move on to action item 7.1, administrative appointments, reassignments, and transfers, director of our African American Student Services.
Yes, President Shaw, members of the governing board. Tonight, it's an honor to bring forward a recommendation for one of the district's most outstanding leaders, one of our most veteran leaders, a leader who has successfully led one of our most renowned magnet schools to an area of community distinction that is almost unrivaled in terms of its place in the community and what it means for parents and students. Not only has tonight's recommendation served the district as a principal, as a leader, as an educator, but she is of the district. She is from the district. She is a child of the district who came home to serve it. And not only that, to serve her elementary school that she proudly attended and where she's currently serving as the proud principal of Holiday Magnet. Tonight, we'd like to recommend Dr. Tanya Strozier. Many years of distinguished service here in the district as an educator and, of course, as one of our brightest administrative leaders. We'd like to nominate her and recommend her to serve as the next director for the African American Student Services Department.
Great. Ms. Shaw?
I would like to move this item.
I would like to second.
Great. The item has been moved by Ms. Shaw and seconded by Ms. Luna Rose. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? The item passes 5-0. Ms. Strozier, it's been an honor to get to know you at your principal's holiday, and I'm really excited about your new role coming up the next school year as a director of African American Student Services. So congratulations. And I'm going to call for a 3-minute break recess so we can take photos and refresh ourselves as we move to our agenda.
Yes, Dr. Strozier, we'd like to invite you to say a few words, if that's okay.
Yes, of course.
Yes.
Before the photos, let's get a few words. Thank you.
President Shaw, members of the governing board, Dr. Trujillo, and our legal counsel, Rob Ross. First and foremost, I want to say thank you to the Holiday family for 8 incredible years. To my family that's here tonight, I thank you for your continued support. And finally, I am humbled and so excited to work with the EDI team and to lead the African American Student Services Department. Great things are to come.
All right, so we'll have a 3-minute recess.
closer. I'm more towards the middle. That's nice. I wish everyone had the middle though. We gotta revamp.
Elbow room.
Oh, these are all action items?
We have a few action items, 2 more action items. All right, I'm going to call the meeting back to order. And we're going to move on to item 7.2, approval to increase expenditures for TUSD contract 21-23-23 tutoring services as needed. I understand we have our internal presenter being Mr. John Lanza. Right.
Shaw, members of the board, I'd like to welcome our Director for Grants and Federal Programs, Mr. Lanza, as well as our Director for Purchasing for any questions on this item.
Great, thank you. And please introduce yourself for the governing board and our audience this evening.
Yes, good evening, everybody. Good evening, President Shaw, governing board members, Dr. Trujillo, Council Ross. My name is John Lanza. I'm the Senior Director for Grants and Federal Programs. And Diana, would you introduce yourself?
Governing board, President Shaw, board members, Dr. Trujillo, Council Ross. I'm Diana Kerfoot, the Director of Purchasing.
Well, for tonight, we have coming for action tonight is a tutoring services RFP. So increasing an expenditure request for the remainder of this school year. Next slide, please. So this is just a little summary of what occurs. We have a RFP to provide tutoring from an outside source. We have 4 vendors that currently provide tutoring under this RFP. So you see them listed there: one-to-one tutoring, one-on-one learning, Martin Porras, and university instructors. They have been on this RFP for the last 3 years. This was originally approved in July 2020. The request tonight is to increase the amount that we can spend on these vendors from $100,000 to $200,000 for the remainder of the year. The reason for this request is that we are getting close to that $100,000 mark with these vendors, and we still have to get through the remainder of this year and through summer school, where these vendors are used in our private schools through grants and federal programs. This is needed to account again for just the increased use of that contract, and again, knowing that we still have approximately 4 more months here that we need to be able to fund this this work. Next slide, please. So just to maybe clarify for everybody how this works and really where we use the majority of this funding. In Title I funding, that funding is based on a census count for all school-age children from low-income families residing in the district boundaries. This is regardless of which school they attend, and we refer to this as per pupil allocation. So it's a count that comes from the community, and then we determine how many of those students are at each one of our TUSD schools, but also we have to take into account students that attend private schools. They don't attend our TUSD schools, but they live in our boundaries and they choose to go to private schools. We're obligated, and on the right-hand side there in green, we're obligated to identify and serve all the eligible at-risk students who reside in our boundaries. So the Title I funds start in TUSD, but they follow those students to private schools. And that is where we're obligated to provide the equitable service, the same service to tutoring that they would have in TUSD. That money, we're obligated to use it for tutoring in the private schools that they're at. Next slide, please. Just a summary, so you know just what we have and where this money is going. 30 or more private schools receive title funding. That's either Title I, Title II, or Title IV. That funding starts in TUSD, and then we allocate it out depending on how many of those students are at the private schools. Each private school has an individual plan. They have a unique budget. Some schools use these contracted vendors, others don't. The uniqueness of the plan really necessitates using these vendors because our TUSD schools use a lot of their teachers for tutoring. We don't have TUSD teachers going to the private schools to do tutoring. We actually have to hire through TUSD to provide that service. And by using these vendors, we're able to have the vendors send tutors to those schools to provide the tutoring, not our TUSD teachers who rarely take that opportunity to go to the private schools. They rather do it at their home schools. The funding stays within the TUSD system, so we do all the purchasing, ordering, delivery, and then the hiring occurs by TUSD and goes to the private schools. Title I tutoring for private schools, it does include summer school. You can see that we do try to hire the tutors to go to the private schools, but we also use these vendors to contract and bring the tutoring to the private schools. So the request tonight is to meet the increased need for private tutor services at the private schools. And to meet that need, we need to increase the amount we can spend from $100,000 up to $200,000 to make sure we can get up and provide those services through summer. And that is the presentation for tonight. I guess we'll open up to any questions you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Alonso. Ms. Shaw?
Thank you, Mr. Lanza. And, this is really odd, but I guess, did the private schools ask for more funding? Like, did they provide data that, like, the tutors that they have been using, or like the budget is almost to the end of what we allocated, and like 100,000 seems like a lot for 4 months. But what concerns me is that like all of this money is going to private schools, and I know like we don't really have a say in that, but it does say on your presentation possibly TUSD schools. So are we utilizing any of these tutors at all in our schools, and how much of this budget is staying in TUSD?
Sure, great question. The majority does go to private schools, like you mentioned. We have about, I think, 4 of our TUSD schools that have tried to use some of these services, and those have been smaller elementary schools that maybe don't have enough staff to provide the tutoring. And so we do provide that option for them to use this tutoring service. But it's minimal in the TUSD schools. Only 4 really come to mind, and they are smaller elementary schools that just don't have the staff to provide the tutoring.
And so a follow-up question would be like, do all the schools know that there is this resource available? Because 4 schools seems like a very small amount, and I know there's a huge need. And so do they know?
They do, yes. So we build this in as part of their Title I plans. Also, ESSER was a component that provided extra tutoring. The majority of our schools, though, have teachers at them that do provide tutoring when that option is there. Very similar to summer school. All of our schools are hosting summer school, and they've been able to find teachers at the site that want to do summer school. So for the most part, our schools have been able to find and fund their own tutoring. It's from the teachers on the site. It's just the smaller elementaries that maybe have like maybe 6, 7, 8 classroom teachers. Those are the ones that usually get stretched where they don't have enough people volunteering, or basically not volunteering, but agreeing they want to teach tutoring after school or in the summer.
All right, Mr. Romero.
Okay, so you're mentioning we're coming up to that 100,000 mark. Where are we at?
Do you have that number? So President Romero, I do not have that number right now, but we could get it for you.
Okay.
And this is proactive, knowing that we're getting close to there. We don't want to cross over that as we go through the next several months.
Right. And then one of the other, I guess, concerns to me is if we just give another 100,000, do we need that 100,000? Can we put a ceiling on where we just spend what we need and it's not that whole 100,000? Or maybe since we have board meetings twice, a month, if we say, well, maybe we only need 40,000 versus just giving $100,000, go for it and spend that money when we don't need to. I guess I just wanted to find out how that looks like if we don't spend all that money.
Sure, and I could probably clarify that a bit. The 100,000 is not being paid out right up front. It allows us to pay up to that 100,000. This is budgeted in the Title I budgets for those private schools, so they have it in their budget. It's actually in the TUSD has that money. It's allocated to those private schools. The 100,000 does not mean we're paying that out. They're not getting 100,000, next week. It allows us to pay out as they do to tutoring up to that additional 100,000. So that is just a safe mark that we know that we don't want to go above that 100,000, but it'll allow us to stay under that and still pay these tutoring services. If we were to run into an issue where, say we did 10,000 this week, but then we've got 12,000 of tutoring that occurred, we're going to run into a cycle where we're behind on paying out to these, and we'd get in a cycle where we'd have to come back almost weekly.
No, that makes sense. And as far as, because you said this started back in 2020?
Correct.
Okay. So from the other previous years, has it always been at that 100,000? or has it been more?
Sure. So the first year was actually 150,000, and I'm not sure. I wasn't here in this position at that time, but the first year was 150,000, and then annually 100,000 was allocated. So year 2 had 100,000, and then year 3, which is where we're at right now, had 100,000 allocated. What we've seen coming out of the pandemic is the first year of this, we were in virtual learning. There was not a lot of usage on this. As we've come out of the pandemic, we've had increased costs to this. Schools are starting to get back up and using more tutoring. And so that's really what we've seen happen this year is increased use of this contract, where in the last couple of years, there was not the increased use that we would probably typically have. This RFP is also going through an RFP process right now for an additional 3 years. So as we're standing here right now, kind of the issue you're talking about, where's that threshold? We're actually going through an RFP process right now for the next 3 years on this same contract, where what we want to factor in is what you're bringing up is, where is that ceiling at? Is it 100,000? Is it 150? Is it maybe 200? So we're not having to come back to the board, halfway through the year to get it increased. So that's a piece that we're measuring right now.
Great. So I would like to know kind of where we're at, but I appreciate you giving me all the information. You answered all my questions. Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ms. Luna Rose.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation.
You're welcome.
Mr. Lanza and Ms. Kerfoot, who I'm not trying to put on the spot, but you're always just so bubbly and positive when you come up here. So it's much appreciated after a long meeting. My question, though, and I know that, I want to be fair and equitable, and this is something we have to do, but is the public able to see the 30 private schools that receive these funds? Like a list?
I would need to check on that. I mean, it's federal funding, so I would guess the answer is yes, but I would need to check on that. Each one does have a plan. They're actually detailed in our district plan. So, I mean, that is public access. So this is something that we could be able to give people access to. That plan is public.
Okay. Just in case, there's somebody that has that question or comes to us, I'd like to be able to have that information.
Sure. Yeah, good point.
All right. Seeing for other comments or questions, I will move to approve the increase in the contracted tutoring services to up to $200,000 for the remainder of our fiscal year.
I'll second.
All right, the item is moved in second by myself and seconded by Ms. Luna Rose. Mr. Romero.
Just one more question. Where would this money be coming from?
This comes from our Title I fund.
Title I. Okay.
Correct.
Thanks.
All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Items passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'll move it on to 7.2, recruitment and retention stipend criteria, proposed language changes.
Members of the board, I'd like to welcome our Director for Employee Relations, Marisela Mesa. Here tonight, we're recommending a small but very important adjustment for ESSER retention stipend eligibility for our bus drivers that were at one time trainees and that could benefit from this adjustment. Ms. Mesa.
Thank you. President Shaw, Board Clerk Romero. We have two requests for edits to our March 8th, 2022 presentation. The first one, in the slides that were presented, on one of the slides we used May 1st as a cutoff date, on the second slide May 15th. Both of those dates were promoted in some various forms, so we want to be able to honor both dates. So there's a request that if somebody is relying on May 1st or May 15th to receive this money, that they receive this money, provided all eligibility is met. The other has to do with bus driver trainees. Technically, they're supplemental positions, and what we found this year, we were kind of in a tough situation because there was such a strong recruitment for bus drivers and getting them looped in, and the way their scheduling works, it's not like a regular supplemental position. They can find themselves in a regular position, and it was difficult for them to meet any of the criteria. So we wanted this language to remedy that. So we're asking for approval on the two amendments.
Thank you, Ms. Mason. I'll just say, I'm just really proud of our governing board and our administrative staff for really thinking outside the box on ESSER funds and making sure we have this available for our every staff member of the district. We're doing $7,500 in stipends above and beyond our normal pay and benefits last semester to semester, and then going into December of 2023. So I think this is really remarkable. Any comments or feedback or questions about these proposed language changes? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve?
I would like to move to approve the stipends for the bus drivers, trainees.
As well as the language change on the May 1 and May 15th?
Yes.
Okay. I'll second the item. So the item is moved by Ms. Luna Rose and seconded by myself. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Item passes 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right. All right, we've already completed 8.1, and now we move on to 8.2, strategic planning, college and career pathway goal setting. Dr. Trujillo.
Yes, President Shaw, members of the governing board, we're excited to attack one of the more substantive items tonight that deals with our favorite topic, academic achievement and excellence of our students. Though the last time we were here, we focused on one aspect of our first strategic planning goal, which was purely the competency goals around numeracy and literacy as they relate to school letter grades and student achievement. But as we all know, there are multiple pathways to student success. We pride ourselves on providing students access to a variety of opportunities in the district: advanced learning opportunities, career and technical education, AP courses, GATE programming, the arts. And here to talk about some of those goals and the targets that we're going to set in those areas to increase access and expansion, we have our team coming in from the Curriculum and Instruction Division, led by our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum and Instruction, Flory Hewitt. We also have our wonderful team members, our lead program coordinator for career and technical education, Mr. Chuck McCollum, our director for advanced learning experiences in the district, Sky Sachko, our director for language acquisition. We have Pat Sandoval-Taylor, of course, our senior director for assessment and evaluation, Dr. Hallie Freitas, to talk about our goals. Mrs. Hewitt.
Thank you. Good evening, governing board members. Again, my name is Flory Hewitt, Assistant Super for Curriculum and Instruction. I'm very excited that you get to hear from some of our team members as well. And I'm just going to walk us through what today's purpose is. It's more a discussion around strategic plan goal number 1. So if you can advance the next slide, please. All right, as you can see, the goals for the presentation today, number 1 is to present you with the recommendations for growth targets in our first goal for future focus ready learning in our strategic plan. Our second goal is to highlight our key performance indicators for goal 1.7 that specifically addresses the college and career pathways, opportunities that are in our district, and what our recommendations are around those areas. And then the two last pieces are, we're going to show you our student participation rates, performance levels in GATE, in our ALE, in our CTE, in our dual enrollment, in our honors courses, IB, and two-way dual language programs. And last, we'll provide some recommendations for improvement in the district's 4-year graduation rate and how our current graduation rate compares to the states and other Southern Arizona school districts. If we can go to the next slide. Before we get started, I wanted to re-anchor us on strategic goal number 1, 1.7 specifically. So the key performance indicator for this goal is to increase the percent of students who are proficient in grades 3 through 8 in English language arts and math. We already discussed this in our governing board meeting on March 14th. So the next portion of that goal is to increase or maintain the percentage of students that are participating in college and career pathways using our participation on the 40th day in CTE, ALE, Advanced Learning Experiences, that includes all of those other programs, and our two-way dual language. And then the last goal within that is to outperform the state's graduation rate. So for tonight, the structure of the presentation, we will discuss in order. We'll talk about our program types, ALE, CTE, two-way dual language. We'll provide you with a current overview of current offerings and participation rates, and then we will offer some recommendations for each of these areas. Now, at the end, we'll allow for some questions. We'll ask you to provide some feedback on those recommendations. With that, I'm going to turn it over to our Director of Advanced Learning Experiences, Sky Sachko.
Hi, thank you, Lori. Um, Good evening, President Shaw, governing board members, Dr. Trejo, and staff. If you could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So these are our ALE offerings. You can see the different offerings that we have throughout the district and the grade levels that those are offered at, and our student counts. So the way that this reads, for example, if you look at our AP, those classes are only offered in high school. And so that number represents 20% of our high school students are enrolled in an AP course. The other ones that are just high school are dual credit. We have some honors at the high school level as well as some accelerated courses. If you think about that, and out of our high school students, we've got 20% in AP, 8% in dual credit, and then we've got several, in our honors and accelerated classes, we've got like 25 to 30% of our high school students enrolled in an advanced learning experience. And we can also include our IB in there as well, since that's a high school offering. I'm not going to read all of the numbers on the offerings because you can see those on there, but I do want to make note of the bottom line where it says total all students unduplicated counts. You might notice that a student could potentially take an AP class, they could be in an AVID class, they could be in a dual credit class. So the counts that we have above, there could be students that's the same student counted more than once, but we want you to be able to see how many students total in the district are enrolled in an advanced learning experience. And so that's our total unduplicated count at the bottom. So that is 35% of our students in the district are enrolled in an advanced learning experience, which is pretty awesome. Next slide, please. So strategies and considerations, when we were looking at like how do we want to look at growing our ALEs, there are some factors to consider, right? For example, dual credit and GATE, the teachers have to have specific certifications to be able to teach those classes. And so we have to take that into consideration as we're looking at growth. We also look at the capacity of the schools, how many teachers they have, how many courses they can offer, because the students have to be able to take other things that you're going to hear about today as well. And so those are the things that we're considering when we looked at how much growth we should shoot for with regards to our ALEs. And some of those strategies I have listed up there. You've already heard about our local norms proposal a couple months ago. We're going to continue to work with our site administrators to identify, ALE opportunities specific to their site, areas of growth for those sites specifically. And something that we're going to leverage for success in our ALEs is the use of AVID strategies across all sites. Next slide, please. So our recommendation for our ALE student participation is we're currently at 35%. So we're shooting for 1% per year, which is really pretty ambitious because considering we're looking at the whole district of about 40,000, just over 40,000 students, that means we want to grow 400 students a year, which amounts to about between adding 15 to 20 course sections or classes essentially. So that's a lot for each year if you think about it. Even though our percentage is just 1%, it's actually 400, a little over 400 students each year with this goal that we have. So that is my little section on ALEs. I'm gonna shoot it over to our CTE program manager, Chuck McCullum.
All right, good evening, President Shaw, members of the board, Superintendent Trujillo, and Council Ross. When we look at CTE, and you can go to the next slide for me, please. When you look at CTE, it fits into this very easily because we are pathways to start. We are not individual classes, we are programs. So when you look at these offerings within our comprehensive high schools, and you'll see that the kids are going 2 to 3 years in these programs. Okay, so an automotive technologies program is 3 years long. So they are in a career pathway to start. The numbers you see, we've broken them down into different areas: industrial, healthcare, human services, STEAM, business, and communications, media, technology. And you can see those numbers. Now, those numbers, I'm going to show you some different numbers. Those numbers that you see now are larger because these are duplicated counts. The counts I'm going to show you in the next slide are unduplicated counts. So the best way for us to look at our comparison is to look at districts our size. We gathered these numbers from Arizona Department of Education and the Arizona School Report Card website. As you can see, Tucson Unified School District has 45% participation of our high school students in career and technical education programs. Okay, that's not bad, 45% when you look at Peoria. Peoria's up there. They're up there because they mandate CTE for their kids. Okay, there's a little plug. But they're going to be hard to beat. But as you can see, we're right competitive with every other big school district in the state of Arizona. Go ahead to the next slide. As you look at our goals, we're looking at 1% goals. Now, year one, 22-23 is 47%. And I'll be quite honest with you, because we took 40th day numbers, we have already met that goal. Okay, so we're sitting at 47% right now. We're looking at a 1% increase, which is about 150 kids a year, 150 students. And we think that's very manageable. We think that's something that we can do legitimately with our programs within the district. Okay, I believe that's it for me. We're going to move on to two-way dual language.
I want to actually, we have a lot of really dense presentation. It's okay. We kind of hit these, a lot of abbreviations, a lot of maybe questions. Can we hit some of these before we move on to another one? And any questions from the governing board members? Ms. Shaw and then Ms. Luna Rose. And this is going to be for either for this topic, CTE, or the previous one, ALE.
Thank you, Mr. McCullum, for your presentation. I do have a couple of questions for you. First question, is there any fees ever to participate in any of the CTE programs?
Not one. We pay for all certification. The district pays for all certifications, any supplies, anything a student needs, all range from safety glasses to tools to scrubs to whatever student needs. The district picks up that fee.
That's great to hear. And my second question is, well, first the comment is that, like, I don't know when, maybe last year sometime when we approved the graduation requirements, I made a motion to make CTE be a requirement by 0.5. And so I wanted to ask you, Mr. McCullum, how manageable would that be if we decided to do that, and what would you need to prepare for that change?
Wow, that's a big question to ask me tonight. Obviously, we would need to look at master scheduling. We would need to look at where we would be with. Go ahead, Dr. Trujillo.
I'm on board with that. I've always wanted to do that, and there's the two issues. One of them is solvable, which is the scheduling. It's the funding. It's the fourth year funding that has to come from the state to be able to staff it and make sure that we can offer it throughout the district. But when you do that, it's very effective in terms of catching students at the point of their high school career, so that they receive these courses are called seminar, which are elective courses that every freshman gets in some of these other districts. I come from a district that did that. And you get a survey of all the different CTE programs that are available, not only at your school, but in the district, that you might be able to get transportation for. I think our kids would benefit from that. It's a half credit. And what we do is we would match it to another half credit. So students have a PE requirement, for example. So a freshman year could look like first semester you take your CTE seminar, and then your second semester you do your PE. So you have a full year. That's kind of always been a dream, and hopefully the funding aspect comes through and we can have those conversations with our high schools.
Yeah, and Dr. Trujillo hit it on the head. To be quite honest with you, our biggest issues in CTE is the trends, where industry is going. Okay, I could tell you right now that the healthcare field, I could offer anything in healthcare, and we're going to get 150 kids. So right now that trend is moving upward. As far as instructors go, industry is paying a lot of money right now. So it's very difficult for us to find somebody who wants to go into the teaching field at the salary. We can't match an HVAC technician making $45 an hour. Okay, so those are some of the things that stand in the way. But a survey class would be excellent for kids to be able to figure out what pathway they want to go into, what they want to see. The key isn't what the kid or what the student does. It's what the kid finds out. We have more students who don't follow the pathway, but at least they're not wasting time when they go to post-secondary or into industry, and the 30 years that they spend in the field is something they want to do. So CTE is somewhere that we're really looking to expand. We are working to partner. We're partnering with ALE on an IB program at Choya High School. We're talking to two-way dual language about a medical translation program within the dual language. So we're doing it in Spanish. So we are looking at some different avenues to increase our CTE participation. Any other questions?
Ms. Luna Rose.
Thank you, Mr. McCollum. You answered my first question, which was, are there any? The list of programs here is very impressive. So I wanted to ask if you were going to be adding to it, and you kind of just alluded to that. But I guess my second part question for you is, what kind of partnerships are we seeing with like JTED or PIMA?
Okay, that's a great question. We do partner with the Pima County JTED. They do run central programs themselves. We are in collaboration continuously, not only with the JTED, but with our sister districts. Okay, so we meet regularly, talk about what we're going to offer, what trends are, what industry is looking at, and we go from there. Our students, we have approximately 300 students that take advantage of JTED Central programs on top of our students that take advantage of our site programs right now. So we work with them very well. Pima Community College, we are looking at dual credit. I'll give you an example. We're looking at a dental assisting program at Santa Rita High School that has a pathway through dual credit, not just CTE dual credit, but let's say English 101, English 102, Math 151, so that when they leave our dental assisting program, they can go work in an office, but then also go to Pima and take advantage of the dental hygienist program. So we are starting to move in that direction based on what Pima's policies are as far as whether our teachers qualify. Those are pathways for kids are the big thing right now, and we really want to take advantage of that and give students every opportunity we possibly can.
Okay, thank you. And then I had a question for Sky. In terms of GATE, and I know we've talked about this in previous, but we're still doing outreach to make sure that we have equitable numbers of students within GATE, like in terms of Mexican American students, African American students, and so forth.
Yes, we have with that district norms proposal that we had been here to talk about a couple months ago. Those placements are going out now, and so families are being offered those placements, and so there's a wider variety, right, of our students that are getting offered those placement statements. And so the GATE office sends those out, as well as those schools that they're being sent out for. Like, for example, if a student's getting offered self-contained placement at Doolin will also reach out to families. If that student is an African American student, then African American Student Services is also going to reach out to that family as well. Maybe not right away because they get some time to reply, right? But if we haven't heard back on an offer, we don't have a decline, then there's several different people that are going to reach out to families, because sometimes too, they might not, if people haven't heard of it before, they might not really know what it is, and they might have questions and not got around to calling. So sometimes when our staff call, then they're like, oh, I actually just have some questions about it. And then it helps them get an understanding of where they might actually want to go, because they do have more options, and all the options are on the placement statements too that you might be familiar with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you both. I appreciate it.
Another follow-up question. Do we know how many more students are being offered placement this year compared to last year?
I definitely know that we're on track to meet our percentages, and GATE is going to support that. I don't have the exact numbers, but I could definitely get those for you if you want.
Okay, Mr. Romero, then Ms. Shaw.
So on the ALE, you're talking like that 1% is 400 students. Do we have what we did last year to this year? Is it kind of in that 400 range where it looks like it's very reachable?
It's reachable, and we have seen, I believe we've seen a little bit more of an increase. We're going to be over the 400 for this year because, and I think I talked about it a little bit before, but we're going to have a bounce back, right, from our COVID years, because we had students that were just burned out from school, and students that would have taken AP classes or dual credit or honors classes in the past, we kind of saw a little dip in our ALEs. And so we're back on that upward trend. And so for this year, we've seen more than a 400 increase. But over the course of the 5 years, I think we're going to end up not increasing quite as quickly, right? So my hope is that will be on track, but that it will kind of even out. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Ms. Shaw?
Thank you. One more question for Mr. McCollum. So I had the pleasure of visiting Milagro Co-Housing recently, invited by Miss Karen, who's sitting in the audience. And she said that you had the pleasure of also visiting. And so I wonder, like, you know, there's talk about like adding a sustainability program to our CTE offerings. What would you need to develop something like that?
Well, I think when we look at a sustainability, we want to tie it into an existing program, okay, as an enhancement to that program. So, for example, the Milagro project, when I went up and visited, my first thoughts were you look at, because of location, for example, you look at Tucson High School's bioscience program. So you tie it into there because that's something they're looking at. You also look at possibly tying it into Choya's construction program, just because of some of the things that they're doing. I mean, I'm not going to get into specifics, but just using Adobe brick is something that is very prevalent out there that our students could learn also, that is a skill. So when we look at those type enhancements, we look at how we can tie them into an existing program and not start something, you know, that's brand new that we may not be, I'll be honest, able to fund. But when we tie it into an existing, then we can make those things possible. So that's how I would look at it, just off the top of my head right now.
Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, board members, for all the amazing questions. All right, thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, let me introduce Pat Sandoval, the director of our language acquisition department.
Good evening, and I'd like to introduce you also to our dual language coordinator, Ms. Ana Manzano. But good evening, President Dr. Shaw, board members, Dr. Trujillo, and staff. We're here to present on our two-way dual language program, which is considered an ALE. And these are the sites where we offer our two-way programs. We have 11 schools. They cover grades 8 through 12th grade. And so we're very proud of those programs. You can see the different grade levels as listed up there. And we hope that next year we're on track to add a 12th school. Well, actually it's 12 schools up there. I see McGee is up there. So McGee is our 12th school that we're adding to our list. We're very proud that we grew a Bloom program to the point where now those students are beginning middle school. And they are, again, will matriculate at McGee. Next slide. So this is currently we have about 5% of our students participating. We have about 2,219 students participating in the program. You know, our goal is to build and expand that program. Again, COVID took a little bit of overall enrollment in the district affected us, but we're moving along, and so we have some more information to share with you. So, Anna?
Good evening. Next slide, please. Okay, when we look at where we are as a district in comparison to the other large districts within the state of Arizona, we do have the largest two-way dual language program or dual immersion program. We have 11, and next year we'll have 12 programs here in our district in comparison to 3 in Mesa and Chandler. So we do have the largest program in the state of Arizona. Next slide. When we look at our recommendations, we were a little more conservative with our percentages because we are looking at ensuring that our classes are staffed with teachers that are both highly qualified with the appropriate certification as well as the bilingual endorsement, and that they have the linguistic capacity to teach in a dual immersion program. So that does require a little more. All right, any questions in regards to our two-way dual language program?
All the languages are Spanish, right? For all the schools, is it two-way? Okay. And what is like the hiring process? Like, I know you need to be certified for two-way dual language. Is there a big deficit in terms of trying to find staff to staff additional programs? That's what I've heard at least years ago. It's really tough to find folks who are properly certified.
So years ago, we were struggling, but we've been very aggressive in our recruitment strategies and in our partnerships with the University of Arizona. As Pat mentioned, last year we did take a little bit of a dip with the decline in teachers just throughout the state. And so again, we're working hard to build that capacity.
Ms. Ekstrom and then Ms. Shaw.
Thank you for your presentation. I see that there's only one high school. Is there any plans to increase maybe to another high school?
Yes, there is, as we follow the pathway for our students on our east side.
And where would that be located?
Sabino. Saguaro. I'm sorry, Saguaro High School.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Shaw.
Thank you. My question is just like when I see the offering at the middle school for the next school year, is it difficult for a student to like join a two-way dual language program like without any background in the Spanish language, or how do they like jump into that program?
Yeah, so the way the model is designed is the main entry points are at kinder and first grade. And when parents make the commitment for the program, it is a long-term commitment because we want to ensure that students, the goal is for them to become bilingual and biliterate at grade level, right? So to answer your question, it does become more difficult, right, as grades move on for a student to just enter at other entry points. So we have a screener that we use to screen students to see if they have enough of the language to be able to be successful in the program. And again, we have some other factors that factor into it, but we don't want students to, feel uncomfortable going into, Spanish language arts when they've never really heard, a lot of Spanish. So yeah, that's how the program is designed.
To follow up on that question, is there any like scaffolding for students who really want to become immersed in the Spanish language but haven't started in kindergarten?
Well, there are various support systems. One of them, obviously is the teacher will scaffold instruction for language learning. So a lot of the SIOP strategies, which is sheltered English instruction, is put in place because students are constantly, right, working to acquire a language. But we also have language academies and they're similar to tutoring, but they focus on language learning. And we have language academies both for English language learners that are learning English and that are in the program. And then we also have Spanish language academies to help them as well. Okay.
Just to add to that, we also provide just a wealth of professional development from our teachers to build that skill set to be able to offer GLAD strategies, any sort of second language learning strategies to support our students, as well as interventions in that target language as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, good evening. I'm here to bring up the end of this presentation with graduation rates.
Can you introduce yourself, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. My apologies. My name is Holly Freitas. I'm the Senior Director of Assessment and Evaluation. And so the last objective here is graduation. And so this is the baseline of 21-22, so last year, and you can see that TUSD outperformed the state of Arizona by about 5 percentage points in graduation. Next slide, please. And so the recommendation for graduation is just like all the other presentations that we've heard tonight, it's an incremental increase with the idea that over 5 years that we will increase 5% in our graduation rates to be at 85% or higher. And of course, we will continue to outperform the state each year. Next slide, please. So I'm just going to wrap this up, and then if you have additional questions, I'm sure my colleagues would be happy to answer. So in ALA, the big push right now is to continue to work on ALA expansion opportunities, especially with use of AVID strategies, and to make sure that we have trained teachers in the classrooms to be able to provide these services. And for CTE, the big push is to increase the percent of students who are receiving industry licenses and certifications so that they actually have these licenses when they graduate from high school and can go directly into their fields. And for two-way dual language, the big push here is really to get the recruitment of highly qualified teachers, because without the teachers, it's very challenging to expand the program. And then finally, with graduation, we're really looking to strengthen graduation for all of our students through more opportunities for credit accrual, especially with our alternative and supplementary programs such as TUVA, COLE, and Project More. And with that, if there are any additional questions for myself or my team, we'd be happy to answer them.
Ms. Shaw.
Thank you for the presentation, all of you. Ms. Freitas, do we have like maybe the average GPA of the last 3 graduating classes?
I can probably get that for you. I don't have it right now, but
Okay.
I can find that for you, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Dr. Trujillo.
Number one, I want to thank our wonderful team from Curriculum and Instruction. They do a wonderful job every day coordinating all of these wonderful opportunities for students. We also wanted to give our board and our community a glimpse of beyond the test scores, that the academic experience that we offer here in Tucson Unified is so much further and so much more beyond just taking the test and focusing on the Arizona Academic Skills Assessment, which we know is important, is going to be a focus. But I think here you see career pathways with CTE, you see a focus on college with our advanced learning experiences, student agency and decision making with AVID, a commitment to the arts. You see our two-way dual language program for emerging biliterate citizens. So it's a good opportunity also for the community to see how, just as we're moving forward and we're setting goals with the core areas of numeracy and literacy, we're not leaving the other aspects of the entire school experience behind and our opportunities that we offer to students. So I also wanted just a quick note on graduation for those of you in the viewing public. When you're talking about graduation, it's very important to know that that's separate from students that are passing the Arizona Academic Skills Assessment or the ACT, which is what we offer in high school. It's based off of credit accrual and your ability to meet the credit requirements here in Tucson Unified. And because we're a traditional public school district, we take students at all points of their credit journey. So you'll see students coming in as a traditional 9th grader with 0 credits, but then you'll also see students coming into the district as a sophomore or as a junior with maybe no credits due to gaps in schooling, due to challenges in their school experience. And it's our job, number one, to take them, support them where they're at, and connect them to the appropriate academic opportunities like you see with COLE and TUVA so that they can get their credits made up. And when you can graduate a student on time according to their cohort year, which is based off of their birth year, then you get that credit for those graduation points. But when you take students that are behind on credits and for whatever reason you're not able to get them caught up on time, then your graduation rate can be lowered. Or if the students drop out at any point before you can get them graduated, that also negatively affects your graduation rate. So here at TUSD, I'm proud to say we fire on all cylinders in terms of credit recovery. You're going to see that with Mr. Armenta coming up in our enrollment presentation. We have an exceptional dropout prevention team that gets on the ground and re-engages families and gets students back in school. We have wonderful opportunities with the Catalina online learning experience for credit recovery as well as what we have in the sites. And I think you see all of that going into that 80.6, which is 4% better than what the state does, and will continue to increase on a year-by-year basis.
Well, thank you, Dr. Trujillo. And this is a great presentation. I wish, in hindsight, that we had moved this earlier in the evening, because it really highlights some of the amazing programs and services and the work that we're doing throughout our district. I know this is a study action. Last time this came to us, we didn't have an action. We gave feedback and direction. Unless there's a strong desire by a board member to make a motion, I'm okay moving on. We've asked our questions and given some feedback. Seeing no motion, thank you very much for your presentation tonight.
Thank you.
All right, next 8.3, Alternate Education Committee Charter Draft. I believe this is going to talk to Ms. Shaw.
Yes, President Shaw, members of the governing board. The establishment of the Alternative Education Governing Board Appointed Committee actually bridges right back to our goals for graduating students and getting kids in the right educational experiences that will lead to graduation. I want to turn it over to Governing Board Member Shaw at this point with some assistance from Mr. Ross. I know that they worked diligently on the draft that you're about to see this evening.
Thank you, Dr. Trujillo, and thank you, Mr. Ross, for helping me draft this charter. As you all know, I moved to approve this Alternative Education Advisory Committee just because of some of the issues we've had over the years as far as the effectiveness of some of these programs. And, they're all great programs, but I want us and the community to help to make these even more effective. And so I invite you to read this, to maybe offer any suggestions or edits, or maybe delete some things if they don't seem to vibe with you. But I think this is really important, and I look forward to the work of this committee.
Do you want to, Ms. Shaw, go into some of the details and some of the goals and objectives with the committee?
Of course. So, it basically deals with our alternative education programs, such as COLE, TUVA, DAPE, and am I forgetting one? I think that might be it. And then also, so I'll read the responsibilities and the goals of the committee would be to, one, make recommendations to the governing board regarding the effectiveness of the district's alternative education programs in meeting the needs of students and community, the need for additional alternative programs, or the need to modify any of our existing programs. So yeah, they'd be, looking at the programs and suggesting modifications, and if needed, they would also maybe recommend that we create a different program if there's a need. Second, make recommendations to the district staff and board utilizing existing data within TUSD locally and nationally, community input, dialogue from the committee members, and presentations shared at open meetings. And so I suggested this be 13 members because I wanted staff from each program to serve, as well as community members, parents, maybe even students who have gone through some of these programs. And Mr. Ross, did you want to add anything?
Thank you, Ms. Shaw. I would just add that we took a lot of the structure of this from the Budget Advisory Committee's charter, which seems to have been working fairly well for that group. So aside from the goals of this group and the membership, we took a lot of the structure from that.
Selena Rose.
Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Shaw, for putting this together. I think it reads well, and I think it's very concise. My question to you is, though, what kind of outreach and marketing will you do to gain your members?
Oh boy. Well, I mean, I don't know if it will just be me who's the one looking and recruiting. Certainly I would enjoy that responsibility. But I think, just like with our other committees, there's like an application link and the board can appoint members. I would look to those programs of the existing people who are working there, maybe department heads, but like also the community. And I think we've had many people speak out about some of these programs. Perhaps we could recruit from those people who have had strong opinions about some of these programs. But yeah, I'm open to suggestions.
And thank you, Ms. Shaw, for putting together this charter and your work with Mr. Ross. Thank you for your work on this as well. Just want to we have a question out there. With a month or two ago when we first reviewed our committees, we had decided to remove the technology committee for two reasons. One, because the charter had changed, or the need for the committee had changed, and also difficulty in recruiting members for that committee. And then we had a discussion earlier today about our audit committee and the difficulty in recruiting members for that committee. Should we approve this tonight and then have another committee that we're trying to recruit members for? Should we focus instead on the committees that exist and making sure that we are recruiting and putting some time and energy as governing board members as well as our staff administration on making sure we have a full complement of people on other board committees, and maybe for the next year ahead, making this maybe one of the budget advisory committees, one of the four goals for the next school year coming up, so that we have a committee that's already fully complemented to be able to work on these issues and look at this, and then maybe make a recommendation whether a full committee is needed with its own 13 members. Would you be open to this being for the year ahead one of the board recommended work of the budget advisory committee for next year, so that we can see what information comes out from staff, what feedback comes in from the community, and what we can do moving forward for these programs?
Thank you for the question. No, I would not like to wait on the budget advisory committee because one, we passed it as a board, and two, I think it would be the job of the committee to make recommendations to us, and if there's a fiscal attachment to that, we can bring it to the budget advisory committee. And also, if you read the charter, it's it says, I don't think we need to create a committee to recruit people. It says in the charter that we would appoint them, or if all of us don't have enough appointments for the 13, that someone can appoint themselves if they have. If you want to scroll up, Jean, to the section of this that in regards to becoming a member, a little, I think it's, yeah, there we go. Well, maybe it's a little bit more up. But I certainly don't think that we'll have a problem recruiting people for this committee because, there's already people working in these programs. I'm sure people would, offer to serve once they hear about it, and, we can craft a way to advertise it. I'd be happy to help with that. But yeah, I don't think this is going to be such an issue as some of those other committees that are having issues with quorum, just because it's so critical. I mean, a lot of our students use these programs a lot, and sometimes there can be changes that will make even more students maybe utilize them in ways that would be more effective. Does that answer your question? Did I answer all of your questions also?
Anything else from the board members? Mr. Romero.
So real quick, as we discussed earlier, we have issues with the audit, but budget that's pretty full, except we added one more, right? So there's just one spot left over on the budget. The employee benefits, where are we at on them? How many members do we have with that organization? Do we know?
Right now, they currently have 4 members right now.
And their charter, do you know how many?
Their charter, I believe, was 7, I believe.
So they need 3. And alternative education would be 13. And if we need 3, possibly 4 for the audit. So I know for me, I think it would be beneficial if we had this as an option right away. So when I go looking for people that want to be involved with that, I say, hey, do you want to be part of the audit? It's like, no, but I'm really interested in the alternative education. I think that gives us a better way to market it. So we say, well, we can't do that one until next year. But if we at least talk to people and try to find the best fit in some of these different spaces, I think it would be a great way to recruit membership. And I think we'll get to that 13 a lot quicker if we start now.
All right, Ms. Shaw.
Thank you. And I wonder if Mr. Armenta might want to speak to this. I'm sorry to put you on the spot since you do oversee some of these programs. Do you think this is a needed committee, Mr. Armenta? You don't have to come up, but maybe if you want. Sorry.
Good evening. Good evening, President Board Shaw. My name is Frank Armenta. I'm currently the Superintendent of Leadership and Student Success. I oversee a couple of these programs currently. I don't see some of the other ones. So I can tell you right now, we are making some progress in this area. As Dr. Trujillo identified here in just a few minutes, we're going to talk about one of the programs that we did with the Credit Recovery Expansion Program. So I am listening to your concerns. I'm also listening to the community concerns. As also being a high school principal for 13 years, I understand the need for that. So I can go either way, but I do want to assure you that I am working very diligently to address that from your request and also from Dr. Trujillo's direction.
Thank you, Mr. Armenta. Dr. Shaw, do you have any reservations about this charter specifically, or just like, what are your reservations?
Well, my reservations are, we have a lot to recruit. We have some struggling committees that we need to recruit for, and our other committees are really more kind of overarching, governing board, oversight of the district, our employees' benefits, and the trust that requires us to have that. Our audit committee, the budget advisory committee has, different, major topics that it's looking at to really help support us. And so this is a very, very specific committee on, 3 programs or 4 programs, and so I'm not convinced that this is what we need right now as a governing board, that we need a committee that's going to come to us recommendations to oversee 4 programs in a district at this time.
Understood. And the reason I ventured to create this committee is because the students who utilize some of these programs are often some of our most marginalized at-risk students. And I just want to make sure that those programs that they often are, fielded into have the capacity and all of the resources that they need to make their student population successful. And also to, look into what we may not have and might need to create. I know Sunnyside has Star Academy, which is like a more intensive, like in-person program for students who need a lot of credit recovery. And some teachers who, work in credit recovery have often said that, there's more need than they're able to, I guess, do as far as like, getting students able to read at grade level, and then, like to handle all the things that are to graduate. And so I think, contrary to all of the other board formed committees, like this one deals with student success, and so it's an important one and one that we should pass tonight.
Mr. Romero.
And I think Ms. Shaw's got some the motivation behind this. I think the ball's rolling downhill really quickly. They got together, Mr. Ross and Ms. Shaw, to get this out right away because of the urgency. And I think, like I said, if we're looking out for our students on these different types of things, this is going to help us understand a little bit more, especially as a new board member that doesn't know all these things. And I look for guidance from our committees to help us make better decisions, because that's what we're here to do. Is we're here to get guidance from the experts that can help us make proper decisions for our students, for our schools, for our community, and for TUSD. Like you said, we did get voted on to do something like this. They're moving forward with it. They're not being hesitant whatsoever. I think we should embrace this, let the momentum move forward, and move forward on creating this committee.
Any further comments from the board, or is there a motion that we made?
I'll move that we approve this charter.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Ms. Luna Rose? Oh, okay. I'll call for a roll call vote.
Ms. Shaw?
Yes.
Ms. Ekstrom?
Yes.
Ms. Luna Rose?
Yeah.
Dr. Romero? Mr. Romero, sorry.
Cool. I gotta increase. Yes.
And Dr. Ravi?
No. All right, item passes 4-1. All right, thank you, Ms. Shaw. And is this ripe to appoint a liaison to the committee? Can we do that in the agenda as is? Or should we wait until we have committee appointments and committee members?
Well, I think you could probably, since the charter is on the agenda, you could move it as part of the charter.
Ms. Shaw, would you like to serve as a liaison to this committee?
I would be honored to serve. Thank you.
All right, so I'll move Ms. Shaw as a liaison to this newly formed committee.
I will second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Item passes 5-0. All right, thank you, Ms. Shaw, for your work on this committee. All right, and then we have our last major item, our 100th day TUSD enrollment report, item 9.1.
Yes, President Shaw, members of the governing board, I'd like to welcome our Chief Operations Officer, Mr. Blaine Young, to give you your annual 100th day enrollment report. Just a quick note, you're going to see an abbreviated version, a much abbreviated version, from the detailed report that I provided all of you that gave you statewide trends, Pima County trends, to better arm you with some questions tonight as you take a look at more of the TUSD-centric information that we'll be presenting this evening. Mr. Young.
Thank you, Dr. Trio, and good evening, Board President, members of the board. Gene, can you go to the agenda? Yeah, thank you. So as Dr. Trio said, there is a second attachment in the BAI that is the more detailed data. That's 20 years worth of data. It really gives you kind of a panoramic view of enrollment in our state. We do have a little bit of that tonight, but this is really about our 100th day. So we'll give you an introduction, overview, followed by the actual 100th day enrollment. You'll hear from our school community services team, as well as school credit recovery programs that Dr. Trio alluded to, and Superintendent or Assistant Superintendent Armenta. And then you'll hear about our enrollment planning for the upcoming year. Gene, next slide. So there's a couple things to know about enrollment in our district. First of all, enrollment varies year to year. So there is change year over year. We're an urban district, so there's a lot of mobility in our district with students coming and going each year and throughout the year. So you see that dynamic going on. There's also rise and falls that occurred within the school year as school year gets underway. One of the things that's a very predictable pattern is enrollment rises between days 1 and 20 within our school, and then it starts to level out and peak, and then it gradually declines during the course of the year. And year over year, our data bears that out. It happens every year, and that's very typical for enrollment behavior. So in order for us to distinguish between enrollment of just students and how we get paid as a district by the state, there's the concept of average daily membership. There are 2 enrollment presentations we do to the board each year. The first one is following our 40th day enrollment. That's a very instrumental number. As I talked about the behavior enrollment, it's at that point at 40th day that number is used for a lot of planning. It's also a number that is pretty predictable of how enrollment's going to trend for the balance of the year. Gene, next slide. So prior to 100th day, comparing enrollment for 2 years on the 40th day is an effective method for determining enrollment. Also, a comparison between 40th day and 100th day for the dynamics I just described also tells us a lot about what's happening with enrollment in our district. Gene, next slide. So enrollment count, when we bring the 40th day report to the district where we landed for 40th day, that's an enrollment count of how many kids are in our district. That number is simply a discrete number at a point in time that talks about how many kids are enrolled on that 40th day, whatever their grade level and how they are enrolled in our school as a part-time or a full-time student is determined by other factors. Daily membership, on the other hand, takes into consideration every student enrolled in our district across the first 100 days and how they contribute as a student as a full-time equivalency. So when we look at ADM for our 100th day, we're looking at the average of all students enrolled in our district across the first 100 days of school. Gene, next slide. So since it's an average and not a count, and the district is funded by the state this way, by what our average daily membership is. This number is critical, and it's really important that we understand that behavior and throughout the year over year and throughout the school year. To compare average daily membership, you must sum the number of days of membership and divide by the number of days that each individual student you have, and then the total count of students. And we've got some examples that illustrate this further. So, Gene, the next slide. Another important factor in the state of Arizona is how the state pays. The state only pays for a half day for kindergarten in our state. So the district subsidizes the additional days so that we have full day kindergarten for our students, because we know how important that is for students to have success in school at that entry point into the system. The other thing to know is for pre-K is not paid for by the state except for XED. So in the case of XED, pre-K is paid for as a half FTE. All of that is factored into our ADM when we're paid by the state. Gene, next slide. So here's an example that illustrates how this actually works. This is a straightforward example. So you see 6 students. The first 3 students are kindergartners. The second 3 students are first graders. If you can see under FTE, there's 0.5 for the 3 kindergartners based on what I just said, based on how the state of Arizona pays. And then you'll see it's 1.0 for students 4, 5, and 6 because they are first graders. Then you'll notice that it's the number of days that we had them. In each case, we had those students all 100 days. So it's 600 days factored in to the total daily membership of only 0.5 for each of the kindergarten, for a total of 450 days of membership, or 4.5 ADM across the first 100 days. Gene, next slide. This example actually shows what it looks like when it is a student that is contributing less than 1.0 FTE, or we did not have the student for the complete 100 days. So you'll see some examples here. Student 1 is actually a 1.0 FTE, but we only had them for 50 days of enrollment. So you see the daily membership is 5.0. Conversely, if you look down to the second student, they're a complete 1.0 FTE because they're a full-time student, and we had them all 100 days. And then you can see that as you go down through those additional students, there are varying examples that show you their course load and also the number of days we had them determine the FTE that they are weighed in at and the ADM that they therefore contribute to our ADM. That last one, it would be a student that's carrying a course load of 3 students, but we had them all 100 days, so it was 0.75 FTE. So this starts to give you a sense of why when we look at enrollment, that's one number, whether we look at it on the 40th day or the 100th day. And then we look at ADM and we're aggregating the participation in our district and how the student, what grade level they are and how they contribute to ADM, why those numbers are different. And it's very important when you're thinking about that's how we get paid from the state, to understand how ADM is calculated. Gene, next slide. So this particular chart is the only chart that we put in that really gave you something that's rolled up beyond our district itself, but we thought it was very telling. So first off, if you look at total enrollment in Arizona, contribution for student contribution, you see that on the left most column that there was 1,069,000 kids plus some change. And then you see in 2023, the current year, there was a change of just 1,774 students statewide that are contributing to ADM in our state. And you see what a small percentage of growth that is. It's 0.2% across the whole state. But if you notice on the charter line, out of that million plus students in our state, 220,000 of those students are actually in charter schools. And so the ADM that associated with those schools are going to the various charters in the state. And you can see the increase between year to year there is 1.1%. So that's noticeably different and higher than overall growth in our state. And so when you look at the largest districts in our state, then you see that there are only 5 districts that actually added ADM in the state, and those are the ones that are in blue. All the others they either saw decrease or almost no growth at all. So this just gives you a picture of what enrollment looks like across our state and the environment, for TUSD. So the report I referred to that's included as an attachment in the BI, that has a lot of data along these lines, and it shows a lot of years of history, so you can really see how the trends have behaved over time. Gene, next slide. So again, making that distinction between ADM and enrollment as a discrete count, this table is actually showing you enrollment. So this is not ADM, this is the count of kids on the 100th day, and you can see a 2-year compare here. So you can see between 2021 22 school year and 22-23 that we actually saw a decline of 359 students. Now think about that number as just the number and count of students for when we get to ADM, and we're talking about how ADM behaved in comparison to that. So just a couple of highlights from this particular chart. Second grade decline due to the smaller kindergarten cohort. And if you look at second grade in the current school year, and you look at the 2903, if you look back to the left for the previous school year and look up when that was a first grade cohort, you can see that the numbers there went up slightly, and yet second grade declined, because if you look straight across, then you will see that in the previous school year, there were over 3,000 students in that cohort. That's what happens with a cohort, and that's what it moves through the system grade year over grade year. And so we'll see that trickle through our system as we bring enrollment to the board and to our superintendent to understand what's happening with overall enrollment in the district. So that's one observation. The other observation, and we're keenly aware of this, is that middle school enrollment loss continues to be pronounced. So we see that. So if you look at the breakout by grade bands from K-5 and just looking at the nominal loss there, which is almost flat, but if you look at middle school, you see 305 student loss for the grades 6, 7, and 8. So that that's an area that we are focused on, and it's an area that we feel as a district. The other thing that I wanted to point out on this particular slide is year-over-year growth at our high school grades. Typically, we see high school give back a little bit to soften the blow of what we tend to experience at middle school, and understand that it's at that grade break point when somebody's child is at 5th grade, they're making a decision about where their child is going to go for 6th grade. Those are the natural times that we would see change or shift in our school enrollment. When we go to the freshman year of 9th grade, we very often see parents that choose another option for their children at middle school will come back to us because they want our high school experience. They want the programs. They want our magnet schools. They want the interscholastics. And that's one of the reasons why you see those cohorts are bigger than the cohorts that you see at middle school. And that is a year-over-year behavior that we see in our enrollment. So those are kind of the main highlights to take away from this. And as we go and look at ADM, we'll make a distinction between that number and the average daily membership on the 100th day. So, Gene, next slide. Okay. So this is just the 2-year compare, and I know we talked about how comparing 40th day to 100th day is gives you a sense of what happens in our data. For the sake of time, I'll just hit the highlights here. One of the things that we see is that elementary grades continue their normal pattern of little to no change enrollment between 40th and 100th day, and that's very typical for that. High school grades experience a 3 to 4% decline between 40th day and 100th day. So the data bears that out, and so you see that behavior. And again, because of the size of our district, the number of students we're talking about, and the mobility in our district, this is normal behavior in our data. Gene, next slide. So this slide actually talks about our actual ADM. So remember, we talked about that number just over 350 that was 40th or 100th day for our discrete enrollment number. But for ADM, you'll see that when we look at our overall ADM, we actually saw in comparing to last year, a decline of approximately 450 ADM. The other thing that was true in our other data as well is elementary membership is predominantly flat. with losses in kinder, second, and fifth grade, but those were offset by gains in first, third, and fourth grade. And again, that's the behavior of those cohorts moving through our system. The other thing to note here is that the grades 7 and 8 experienced significant losses, repeating the losses last year in grades 6 and 7. So again, that's not only cohorts moving through, it's the behavior of our enrollment in middle school. So I want to take a pause because at this point we're going to shift, and I want to turn it over to Christina Grabowski, our senior coordinator for school community services, and she's going to talk about the enrollment side of students coming into our district. But are there any questions about any of the data?
I have a question. It was for Mr. Young or Dr. Trujillo. So we talk a lot about kind of the middle school loss going from 5th grade to 6th grade and a loss there. But I'm seeing more of a loss going from 9th grade to 12th grade. You know, what's going on in the high schools? Why do we have about 350 students less in 12th grade compared to our 9th grade?
Mr. Armenta is going to speak to this, but we see a very clear pattern with these students that it has to do with credit deficiency. And not understanding fully all of the resources available at TUSD in terms of credit recovery opportunities. Most of these students are behind on credits and feel like we're not, for whatever reason, meeting those credit recovery needs, and they're choosing smaller alternative or online programs. I think you'll see coming up, though, that we're starting to rebound a little bit with the enrollment in the credit recovery evening school initiative. Mr. Young?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Drew. Well, at this point, Gene, next slide. And I'll turn it over to Christina Grabowski.
Good evening, Dr. Trujillo, Board President, Governing Board members, Council. I'm Christina Grabowski, and I am the Program Coordinator for School Community Services. I have two teams that are in the office. The first set is the Student Service Associates, which they are the ones who are manning the main office in Building B at 1010. And so their job is to assist all families with exceptional customer service. So they are the ones answering the phones, they are assisting parents, schools, other departments. And then we have also instituted a new option this year for parents, is that they can actually go through and accept online registrations or online placements. If we do not hear from those parents, then my front staff do go through and actually make a phone call to each and every parent who has not responded yet. The front staff also processes all the applications for the magnet schools and the open enrollment schools. They're responsible for all the mailings and then doing the acceptances and declines when a parent does phone call. They also go through and help parents set up a parent view account. They do the online registrations for families if they are having technical difficulties. We are responsible for building new students who are arriving into the districts. And then we also do go through and connect with our Synergy support team. We also have an SCS email that they are responsible for. And then we also have the Building B access control. We have the cameras that we control. Gene, next slide, please. I also have 7 full-time enrollment ambassadors, and these are the people who are out in the field. So the majority of their time is spent at schools, or they could be at a family resource center assisting families. So their job is to assist new families in the district. The goal with the enrollment ambassadors is as soon as a student comes into our district, we want to keep them until they graduate from high school. They do have their own dedicated email address, and that is enroll@TUSD1.org. So we have 7 enrollment ambassadors, so they each have an assigned day that they're responsible for going through and answering emails. They are starting to work with communications, and they're working on getting the good news at our schools, and they do report that back to communications. So when we go through, they do go through and do events. So this Saturday, they are going to Catalina High School to go through and do the festival. And we also have 2 enrollment ambassadors. There is a track meet that is occurring at Saguaro High on Saturday. So we do have 2 enrollment ambassadors who will be attending there in case there's any parents who need to register their students for next school year. They do meet with various departments to get training. We do have a new enrollment ambassador who started in October, so it's the perfect time for them to go through. So far, they've met with over 20 departments in the district, and they do have ongoing meetings with certain departments, including MTSS and counseling. They have started sending out more newsletters. They have been trained, and they do provide those to families, and they're actually getting a very good return for when they're going through and seeing how many families are reading their newsletters. So their goal is a minimum of 4 contacts for every new family, and then they still continue on into their second and third year with at least another 2 contacts per year. So they have attended various things, Love of Literacy, AZ Bilingual. They do the Magnet Fair, Kinder Fair. They are going to Catalina, and then they are going to be attending the track meet also on Saturday. Next slide. And so as far as how we are doing with the enrollment for the application schools, so that number has actually gone up over spring break. We did receive over 100 applications that we processed, so we're at over 4,400 applications. And so when we went through and decided this year what else could we do for parents, we added in a step where parents can actually go on, they're notified when a lottery has been run, and then they can log into their account, and if they've been offered placement, they can accept and decline at that exact moment. So we did make 1,200 offers for lottery number 1. Because we've added in that electronic aspect, we did have a 91% response rate, which was amazing compared to the other school years. Our second lottery, the number of obviously offers that have gone down, and then our response rate was not as high because now we're getting into the second lottery includes both second and third choices. So therefore, if a parent didn't want a third choice, then they potentially chose not to respond to us. And then we just finished up lottery number 3, and actually the response rate did go up to 77% because my staff went through and made phone calls to all those families we hadn't heard from. And so, do you have any questions on enrollment before?
I will just say, for the purposes of time, we'll just kind of close with the credit recovery and then open it up to questions. I know we still have some highlights of our promotional efforts. That's been part of the attachments. We can ask those questions. I just want to make sure we're keeping our presentation time limit.
Good evening again, board members, President Shaw. I just wanted to highlight this is one of the programs that we're talking about in our district. As you identified within the data that's provided for you, that you identify that there is an issue here when we look at 9th, 10th, and 11th grades that we're losing some of our students. So one of the things that when I came on board, I met with Dr. Trujillo. This is one of the initiatives that he wanted us to make sure that we move forward. We are trying to move away from the night school, but really thinking about empowering your future when coming to credit recovery. And the goals here was to really think about a credit recovery that was within our school boundaries, within the confines of a school, not to add any more to our principals, not to have them figure out, oh, do I need to create another schedule? So really redesigning our existing high school bell schedules. Currently, our bell schedules run from first period to 6th period to first period to 7th period, but we also offer what's called a 0 hour and also what we call an 8th or 9th hour. So by redesigning that and opening that up for our students on our campus, we could then say we can open that up for them to do credit recovery. Again, we want to look at specifically being flexible with this design. When I met with the ambassadors and also with Dropout Prevention, they needed more tools in their toolkit by offering something for a parent to say, we want you to stay in our schools. As we have found out that these students who are credit deficient also have 504s, also have IEPs. Some of these students need the MTSS support system. So when they leave our district, they don't have that. So we wanted to make sure that they were still engaged in that. This initiative started August 29th, so you can see our numbers there. This is what it was district-wide. As we kind of lifted it off the ground, I did come in October and asked the board, along with John Lanza, to provide ESSER funds for this. And I want to thank you for that, because you can now see that when we see in February that we are now focusing on those 10th and 9th graders that we are now losing. We're not losing those students. When I met with all 9 high school principals and what we now call the school site liaison for this, they're enthusiastic about this program. They want to continue. So I assured them that we will continue to fund them for the following year. That is a live QR code for our families. If you go onto that QR code, you will find the school that's there. You'll also find the liaison that is there to support your child. They will also find the dropout prevention specialist that is assigned to that school. And you'll also find that there is an ambassador assigned to that school. So everything is there for those students and families. But I just wanted to highlight that we are making that effort. We want to make sure that when our students leave, they're not leaving without speaking to an ambassador, dropout prevention specialist, or a school site liaison. So I'll turn it over back to Mr. Blaine.
So as Dr. Dreer said, there are, as far as the marketing efforts for the balance of this school year and next school year, there are slides that highlight that from Leslie and her team and the collaboration she does across the district. But at this point, if there's any questions that the board has on any of these areas or about enrollment in general, we'd be glad to answer them.
I have a question. And some of the ESSER funded positions, like I believe I remember from 2 years ago when we approved some of the enrollment ambassadors and folks. Is that a program that we're able to continue? Is that something we have other funding sources for? What is the plan with those programs after next year?
The enrollment ambassadors, we have every intention of building them into the budget. We want to make sure that that resource is continually available for parents. I do get to see them quarterly, and it's really informative for me because they give us an on-the-ground assessment of how responsive our schools are to enrollment, what the prevailing attitudes and opinions are coming into schools, and actually for also those families that are leaving. Now, I'm not aware of an alternative funding source at this point. I could be wrong, Blaine, but our positions are funded out of M&O. Are there extras that we did fund through ESSER?
There are.
Okay.
Two of
Those are 2 of the 7, right? Because we have the 5 coming out of the district budget. So our intention would be for those 2 positions to fold them into the budget.
Ms. Luna Rose.
Thank you. Thank you for the Sorry, turned off my mic. Thank you for the presentation. I just had a quick question. Maybe, and maybe this is something that I can have offline with Ms. Leinhardt. I just kind of wanted to know what kind of tools are you using to monitor how many people are responding to the ads? Like, if is there SEOs, kind of, marketing data are you using?
Sure. Thank you for the question. We do use tools. We have tracking tools that from each of the different, digital ads or TV, radio, anything, it's something that they can click. We do use Google Analytics, and so we have tracking URLs that come back to us, and then we've started to monitor those. We just started that this year, so but we're getting more and more of them out there with every campaign and each different type of advertising that we're doing.
I have a question, Dr. Trujillo. I'm not sure if you had the answer, but with our 100-day enrollment, we would budgeted this year to be kind of neutral, I believe, right? So we have looks like 404 less than our change. Is that going to affect our budget by a certain amount that we need to be aware of going into the end of this year?
Well, every time that you've got you lose students, your budget capacity shrinks. TUSD, of course, we're in the position that we have a sizable carry forward. So any shrinkage, and roughly it's about $500,000 for every 100 students. So any shrinkage is going to have to either be absorbed through budget reductions in the different departments. Sometimes you can achieve those through what are called underspends for whatever reason. A particular department or school doesn't spend all of its budget. You can soak it up. You also have vacancy savings. And that's not a good thing, obviously, from a financial perspective. When your enrollment shrinks and you have vacant positions, yes, you can soak those positions up, and that helps absorb the blow of the loss of enrollment. The downside of that is those aren't teachers and employees working for us, and that's not a good thing. Lastly, when you're talking about the loss of students and you're talking about the loss of ADM, we talked about that number 100,000 or 500,000 every 100 students. You're also looking at different funding sources, right? So if we are shrinking overall budget capacity, we also have to look at what are some of those other budget funding sources that we have, Title DSEG, Title 2A, what could they soak up if needed? But with such large vacancy savings at this particular time, we're going to be pretty much in a budget neutral situation.
Thank you, Dr. Trujillo. Any other questions or comments from board members? Well, thank you very much for your presentation this evening.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you. All right. Dr. Trujillo, anything on 10.1 future meeting dates and agenda items? Anything you want to highlight for the month of April? That's starting in a few days.
The season, the month of April, we're going to have some code of conduct process revisions updates for the governing board. It is compensation season. So we will be having some of those updates coming up in April as well.
Anything else on 10.1 from governing board members? All right, well, thank you very much. I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Thanks, everyone.